and gentlemen, let's go. We ain't got no time to waste. Let's go. You are now listening to Jason Anderson, and you are in the zone.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
If I say, hey, your life depends on you successfully running a marathon in a year.
Oh, I can do it. Yeah, in a year. If my life depended on it, yeah.
6 months.
Yes.
3 months?
I mean, most people run it in, a few hours? I think I could do it in 6 months.
Great point, Beards. Great point.
Can I go home?
You're in the zone on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, a Monday edition of The Zone right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe and Drake heading up until 2 o'clock. We've got you for the next 4 hours. A lot of stuff to get into today. We've got NBA Finals game number 5 on the line tonight with the championship. If the Denver Nuggets win, they win their first NBA championship. If the Miami Heat win, they just delay the inevitable, and it will be a Game 6, which I would like to see happen since my wallet has the Nuggets in 6. So let's go Heat. But no offense, Shane, okay? You're going to win the finals, okay? You just do it in Game 6. It's perfectly fine. That's 7:30 night, 6:30 coverage right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. 7:30 with game number 5, the Miami Heat and the Denver Nuggets. Quick little sidebar. Remember we talked about what the get-in price was around $750 for Game 5 in Denver before Game 4 when the Nuggets were up 2-1, and we said if the Nuggets win that one, I'd like to see what the get-in price is going to be. It is now up to $1,100 get-in price there in Denver. Since this is going to be the last home game for the Nuggets, there's not going to be a Game 7, and they can win the championship tonight. If they don't tonight, then they'll win it in Miami in Game 6. If not, then Game 7 will be astronomical, the numbers, but I just don't see the Miami Heat winning back-to-back games when their margin for error is so incredibly slim against a much better team, or at least just a better team. They're both in the NBA Finals, just the better team, and they've showed that in the first 4 games. So we can talk about that as the show progresses, but that's coming up tonight right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. The Royals are back in action, or back returning home, whether you like it or not. They are facing off against the Cincinnati Reds. Here's the reason to go out and watch the Royals tonight. Elly De La Cruz is in town, and it's Chiefs night.
These are the top 2 reasons to go to the Royals game.
Here are the reasons to go to the Royals game. Chiefs night, so you get to see Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid. Travis Kelce throwing out the first pitch to Patrick Mahomes. They will have a red carpet around the stadium with the Lombardi Trophy. There's reason number 1. Reason number 2, maybe the second most exciting player in baseball right now behind Shohei Ohtani and Elly De La Cruz is in town. Fiend. There you go. Reasons to go out to the ballpark. I actually would love to go out to the ballpark. I was going to take Everett to tonight's game, but he ends up having a doubleheader in his Little League baseball league, so cannot miss those games. We're going to try to go out there tomorrow, but that's not Chiefs night, so there'll be one reason for us to go out there tomorrow, and that is simply to watch his grandfather's favorite team in the Reds and Elly De La Cruz. We will be watching. It will not be to watch the Royals go out there and score a run or 2. Zach Greinke's on the mound, so therefore 0.
0
tonight.
probably.
There's a Luke Weaver. There's another Weaver. Even though the Royals play the Angels in a couple of days, I feel like Weaver should be playing for the Angels. Yeah. There's 15 Weavers that have come along, and they've all played for the Angels, so I'm not sure why Luke Weaver is playing for the Reds right before the Angels get in town. I feel like he should be pitching on Thursday for the Angels, but that's not the case. He's pitching tonight for the Cincinnati Reds in what will be a 6-1 final. The Reds will beat the Royals tonight, but in a fun Chiefs night and a pretty awesome towel that they're giving away. Oh, sorry, that's reason 3.
There we go, the towel.
Reason 1, Chiefs night. Reason 2, awesome towel. Reason 3, Elly De La Cruz.
And that microfiber is not going to scratch your face at all. Super absorbent, so your tears are going to go right into it. Really easy to just go ahead and mop those up.
But it'll be tears of joy watching the Lombardi Trophy go around. And then,
wow, good point.
And then
you flip it over to the blue side. It's why it's half red, half blue.
Yeah, but can there be tears with apathy?
Tears of joy, tears of grief.
Does apathy bring tears?
No, I think apathy brings absence more often than not, which is also why you got to have some
absinthe.
Which would also might help.
Which could help.
Might actually help. help some absinthe.
Maybe.
The Royals bats are made of wormwood. Is that anything? I'll work on it.
Yeah. Why are they swinging with balsa wood? I'm not sure what the point of that is. It doesn't seem like it's
absinthe in the clubhouse.
the best strategy for this team. Let's see how it works out for them. Turns out it's not. 913-912-4810 is the text line. We will talk some NFL football. Nick Shook from NFL.com. He will be our guest, and he's got an awesome series going on at NFL.com of the top 10 next-gen stats, all different categories, top 10 players via next-gen stats, not just, hey, here's top 10 next-gen stats. Let's talk about those. No, players, he's got explosive runners, he's got deep passers, pass catchers, defensive disruptors. The latest one he has is cover men, and there are some Chiefs that show up in these different categories. One real surprise that we talked about last week, and that the pass catchers, the number one in the NFL in catch rate over expected, Richie James. Amongst a who's who of wide receivers, at the top is Richie James. So we'll talk to him about that and how shocking and surprising that is, certainly surprising around here. How surprising that is for him when he went through all the receivers to see all the criteria, who fits that, and then where they rank. And number one is Richie James. And oftentimes I would say, like, if you're doing some sort of a stat or study or ranking, like, say, for instance, quarterbacks, if you're doing some sort of a quarterback ranking, unless it's crap, if it's something good or just ranking quarterbacks, if Mahomes isn't number one by whatever metric you're using, I would go back to the drawing board, redo those metrics, and figure out then Mahomes goes number one. This is one of those to where if Richie James ends up number one, I would wonder, like, what are the metrics and how does he end up number one over guys like Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson and players like that? So we'll talk with Nick Shook about those things, and then Chris Jones being the number one defensive interior lineman disruptor, which isn't a surprise. The surprise for me is that the turnovers created by pressure, he was number 2 in the NFL last year of all players, only behind Micah Parsons.
That makes sense.
It's more than every other. Nick Bosa led the NFL with 18 sacks, had less turnovers created by pressure than Chris Jones.
Imagine if Chris Jones just only said nice things and didn't hit too hard.
Oh, my goodness, right?
He would have been first.
Imagine if he would have had the football in one hand while also delicately sliding off of Carr with his other hand and levitating to his right, and almost like he's Dana in Ghostbusters levitating over Bill Murray.
There is no Dana, only Zool.
Thank you. If Chris Jones would have just simply done that, he'd have another turnover created by pressure, and he'd be tied with Micah Parsons.
If he had the ability they just put into Madden of diving for no reason and just sort of levitating above the ground for a little bit, like
That's
Patrick Mahomes throwing that incomplete pass in the Super Bowl,
like Zool,
give that to Chris Jones.
That's right. So we'll talk with Nick Shook about those things and many others as well. Also, the cover men. Juan Thornhill shows up.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at this one yet.
Not in the top 10. He shows up in the just missed the cut.
Okay.
So top 15. So we'll talk to him a little bit about that. Coming up at noon, we'll talk with Max Reaper. Oh, boy, it's been pretty grim for the Royals all year. He's from Royals Review. We'll review what he thinks of this Royals team and how bad it is. It's getting kind of hard to believe things are going to get better.
Max and I were texting back and forth a little bit yesterday to line up this the Sadness Power Hour that we will have at noon.
Well, it's only just a Sadness Power third of an hour.
I think it's going to really stick to me for the rest of the hour, if I'm being honest. I think when we talk about the Royals for too much, I think I need a good 15 minutes to sort of shower it off at least. I'll have fun by the time Mick gets here. But he was like, well, we could just bring the positivity. We're really going to find some things. Like, you know what? We could do a micro segment of things that we still believe are positive about the Royals, and I'll say this. Still like their uniforms. The whole set is still really clean,
City
really
Connect
nice.
uniforms. They did a really good job, City Connect uniforms. Baltimore's uniform, City Connect.
Sad.
How do you know that they're Baltimore City Connect? They're just black uniforms.
Weird.
There's like an orange logo.
You have to cuff the shirt to see the pattern. It was a weird choice.
Yeah, and then they were like, oh man, who was at shortstop? Like, he's really embracing the City Connect. Look, he's got the socks and he's got the arm sleeve. That's just the random thrown in color there for the City Connect.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's cool. Royals are much better.
The whole
with City Connect.
the
So there you go.
classic royal blue sort of softball tops are good.
That's right.
The white homes are good.
Beautiful.
Any powder blue anywhere in there is a great thing.
Absolutely. They got some really good uniforms. And guess what, Baltimore? 2014, eat it.
Yeah.
So
Two things. We got two things to hang our hats on from the last decade.
So there's that. 913-912-4810 is the text line to join us. Also, Mick Schaefer, as you mentioned, KSHB 41 Sports Director. We'll get into Learn Funniest Best in the 1 o'clock hour. What we learned from the weekend, funniest from the weekend, and the best from the weekend. I've got about 4 funnies from the weekend.
Ooh, okay.
So, I don't know. I may try to just get all of them.
You can learn that something was funny. I think that works. The best thing can be something that made you laugh.
Yeah.
I think we can make this. We can make this work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My best is the all the games the Royals won this weekend.
Every of the games.
Every single game that the Royals have won, really for the last week almost.
Well, they played beforehand. They played a paper, rock, scissors, and they won that one. So they did win a game.
They did actually do rock,
It's a
paper,
thumb war.
scissors at the MVS charity softball game, I think, to figure something out at the beginning. Maybe
No
the
kidding.
Royals should try that. Yeah, that's a good idea,
I
actually.
thought it was awesome. Bobby Witt versus Gunnar Henderson, 2 of the top prospects last year. They're like 1, 2, 3, 4. I declare a thumb war, and Bobby Witt won. They're like, boom, take that. And then Henderson hit a home run, 3-run shot, and they swept the Royals. So, but I kind of feel like that's a draw.
Bobby won, and then Gunnar went to the Orioles, so he won.
Yeah.
And
So
You know.
those things.
wins and else.
Yep. So Mick Schaefer will join us in the 1 o'clock hour. I do want to hear about the softball from Friday night because I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation of you not really having to host and you kicking Sterling off the show to then give the headset to Creed Humphrey and George Karlafakis.
Yeah, that's right.
I loved that. I want to get into that in just a second. But first, shut up.
Whoa, your watch wants to go straight to the charity softball stuff.
No, she said, I'm not sure I understand about this softball. Please start with how crappy the Royals are. I almost said the S word, by the way, right there. It just popped into my head. I don't know why, but I almost said that. Crappy.
It's gotten really bad.
Isn't it?
We all just sort of absentmindedly curse about baseball now.
The like last week, like the F word popped into my head right as I was getting, and I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Too comfortable.
Probably, yes.
Too relaxed.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
That's what it is.
It's like, finally, I can stop carrying all this bleeping weight. I mean, oh, God!
When you were gone, I mean, it was like I didn't even cuss at home. I mean, I was just so straight and narrow. I was focused.
Those veins in your forehead, though, were popping.
Very focused. So the Royals, they are 18-47. They got double swept. You ever get doubly frustrated? I don't think I get doubly frustrated. 18-47. Remember when they were 17-38? And you're like, all right, cool. Good things are going to happen. They're 17-38. This is great.
Come on, Fetty Wap.
And then he goes to prison.
Yep.
And now it's all crap. It's just all falling apart.
Free Fetty.
Is what's happening. 18-47 right now. They are 1 game up in the win column on the A's, who have won 6 in a row. Or 5 in a row.
5,
in a
Jason,
row, sorry.
please.
All right. Sorry. They've won 6 in a row against the NL Central, oddly enough, but they've won 5 consecutive games in a row right now to have their record at 17-50 and the Royals at 18-47. The Royals playing roughly 269 baseball. Nice.
Not nice at all.
It isn't nice. You're right. Do you know what they have to go the rest of the way to avoid 100 losses? I mean, they're going to lose 100, but
no.
if you were just thinking,
Oh, man.
if you were thinking, you wouldn't have even thought this. But
they would have to. I don't know what the number would be. It's going to be really, really atrocious. They'd have to go 650 winning percentage or something.
it's actually not that.
Is it not that high?
No, they don't even have to go 500.
Is that true?
It is very true.
All right. Well, that shows how low my hopes are.
They need to go 45-52 the rest of the way.
They could play sub 500 baseball.
They can play 464 baseball to go 63-99.
Would that feel like a win, do you think? Or will we be so deep in the training camp that it won't matter?
Max Reaper, who we're going to have on at noon, had the worst 62 game starts since 1969.
Okay, that sounds nice.
This was 3 days ago before they got swept by the Orioles, by the way.
Okay, good.
When the Royals were 18-44 and things looked up.
Yeah.
I'm just joking.
Yeah. Bright days.
The 10 teams that had a worse record than the Royals.
Mm-hmm.
Royals at the 11th worst record through 62 games since 1969. Only one of those, or two of those teams avoided 100 losses. The 1987 Padres that ended up 65-97, and then the Orioles that ended up 66-96. The rest of them lost 100 games. The Royals have to play 464 baseball the rest of the way. You know the last time they played 464 baseball over the course of a season?
2015. That's an exaggeration, but it can't. It doesn't.
You're not far off.
Am I really not? I'm
No.
afraid for it to be close.
A little closer.
Boy, they really haven't done this in full-on seasons.
2017, they played 494 baseball.
Holy bleep.
2017, when they finished 2 games under 500, they played 494 baseball. That's the last time they got to 464 baseball. And that's what the Royals would have to do the remaining 100 games in 97. They'd have to play baseball the way they did in 2017 when the Royals felt like they were buyers at the deadline. They were buying at the deadline. That's how good that 2017 team was. That was with Kane and Hosmer and Moose Tacos and Salvi and that fun, hey, let's give it one more run. Let's see if we can get this thing together one more time. They have to play that baseball to avoid 100 losses. So they're going to lose 100. Do we know that?
Yeah, sure seems likely.
Because they're pacing for 45 and 117.
I'll take it. Yeah, I'll take the over on 100. I might take
Yeah,
I might take the over on 117.
I'll take the over on 100. This is the last one, a little point, and
I got a stat for you too. No, I'm gonna hit one back at you.
Okay, cool. But just the last point.
Sad
and
numbers.
Then we'll let you go.
Go talk about the Chiefs or something.
If your orders were that Santiago wasn't to be touched, and your orders are always followed, then why the transporter? Last point on this.
I know these references. These
Okay,
are my
great.
favorite.
So last point. Royals go to the World Series in 14, win the World Series in 15. That's awesome. They play 500 ball in 16. They play just below 500 ball in 17. So that fun run in 14, 15, 16, 17. Should also throw in 2013 when they played 530 baseball. They just did not, make the postseason. You know how long it was their last 100 loss season from 2013 when they played 500 ball? Since the Royals are going to lose 100 games this year.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
If we're just looking at like how far away they might be, comparatively speaking to the team that we want to compare these teams to, can they get to a point of where they're actually having some level of success? The last time they had lost 100 games before that 2013 through 17 run was 2006. They had 6 years removed from their most recent 100-loss season before they played 500 ball.
Yeah.
Now, they lost 97 games in 2009. So they would be then 3 seasons removed from a 97-loss season. So let's even say that that is this team. You would then be looking at 24, 25, 26, 2027 before they played 500 baseball. 500 baseball. If we're looking at the way the Royals did it before and saying with the economics of today's baseball, they're not going to go out and just have a higher payroll than the Yankees like they did before the strike of 94. That's not going to be the case. And that's never going to happen. So they're going to have to do some of the things the same way that they did before. Making trades, being transactional, drafting well, making good, smart decisions, putting together a group of players that just simply figure out and know how to win, not the exact opposite of what is going on right now with a group of players that seem to know how to fall short in these games. That's where it gets pretty grim along with already being 18-47 this year. But grim in terms of, hey, this is an evaluation year, so really, how much do you care about the record? I've talked about it last week. I don't care about the record at this point. There was a level of caring about the record earlier. Now, it's about what's going on in the field because the record is such crap. The record to me only matters as long as you finish in the bottom 3 of the standings of all of baseball so that you can get the highest percentage of winning the lottery. So the record, neither here nor there. It's just a matter of looking at what they have this year and what is actually on the horizon and how close they might actually be. And it doesn't feel like there are a lot of reinforcements coming because that 97-loss season in 2009, eventually you would see the Hosmer and the Butler and the Moustakas, and then eventually we know the Kane and the Escobar and et cetera, Davis and Shields when it became transactional, when they felt like they were closer, Giordano, making his way up, Duffy, those pitchers, Holland, Herrera, those pitchers that were making their way to the big leagues, like there were reinforcements you felt like were coming and getting closer or were going to be drafted and developed eventually. There isn't that feel to it because Mazzucato is on the IL. Gavin Cross continues to strike out as often as a freshman trying to find a prom date. And Nick Lofton is on the IL. And the bright spot from a year ago that you felt like should you sign him long-term and Vinny Pasquantino is back on the IL with the same shoulder discomfort that put him on the IL last year that he spent this offseason rehabbing to then have it happen yet again this year, same shoulder, which is the concern that starts to become chronic and not acute that you're able to go and figure it out in the offseason. Now it's 2 years in a row, same shoulder, with an offseason of rehab and working specifically on that in the middle. The light at the end of the tunnel right now is not there. So there's your assessment. 60 games in, or whatever it is. I don't even know. Not 60 games in. Who cares? 40% of the season. Whatever 40% of the season is.
It's more than 60.
Yeah.
I can't. What's
65
the point?
games in.
What are you counting? Losses?
I don't like counting.
Don't count.
We won't. We'll take a time out. We'll come back. We won't count the home runs that Patrick Mahomes hit in the home run derby at the softball game.
We could fill some time.
We do know that he won the home run derby because, of course, that's, hey, Patrick, you might win something else. What is it? I don't know. I'll figure it out. Great, you won it. We'll talk about some fun stuff of what took place at the MVS softball game and what was one of the more enjoyable broadcasts that I've heard that was so much less of Josh and Sterling, which is what made it so enjoyable.
Couldn't agree more.
Oddly enough. We'll hear about that. We'll hear from some of the Chiefs players, including George Karlaftis and Trey Smith and Sky Moore and Noah Gray. And then also we'll hear from Frank Clark, who was on the Undefined podcast with Josina Anderson for about an hour or so, and they discussed a lot of different things, but he got into detail about when he knew that his time in Kansas City was over, what the conversation was like with Brett Veach, and then also weighing in on why not just take less again to stay in Kansas City and some of those things. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. We'll get into more Zone right after this.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch.
Peace of mind, that's what Pyramid Roofing gave us at our house, and it wasn't just simply with the roof, it was with the gutters, because since we moved in, we'd had some issues with the gutters, and I wasn't about to get up on a ladder and start to clean those things out, but we had areas of the gutter where it was just overflowing, and it was spilling out, and it was actually spilling out on parts of the concrete, which was starting to break that up. And what we found out was our gutters were way too small. We needed bigger gutters. We needed the gutter guards to go along with that. Pyramid Roofing was able to take care of all of those things, whatever other cosmetics that were there around the gutters, it's been great. I haven't had to worry about what's going on in rain, especially this weekend. I haven't looked out and watched a waterfall coming from the roof that's landing on part of the basketball court or the basketball goal that's now, starting to chip away. That is taken care of, and Pyramid Roofing has done all of that for us. Nice weather is here, so it's time to make sure that if there's something going on with your roof, if you're outside, check it out, look at it. Plus, with the rain and the storms and the wind going on, Pyramid Roofing can give you a free estimate and make sure things are done the right way the first time. 816-966-1101 is the phone number for Pyramid Roofing, or you can check them out, pyramidroofingkc.com for a free estimate, 816-966-1101, or check them out, pyramidroofingkc.com.
Twin Peaks is the best in the game. Here, your favorite drafts report at a frosty 20.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake. We head up until 2 o'clock. 11 o'clock, we'll talk some NFL football. NFL.com's Nick Shook will be our guest. He's got the series going on of the top 10 players with different next-gen stats that have some of the best players in the league at positions that are big-time stat stuffers in terms of the advanced analytics. There are some moves that are made by the Royals in the minor leagues, which could and I think will have an impact on the big league club. The Royals have moved up 3 players from Northwest Arkansas. John Rave, center fielder, Northwest Arkansas, OPSing at 809, getting on base at 380. So, we'll take that while batting 275. He has been moved up to Omaha. He goes from being a natural to a storm chaser, along with Alec Marsh, who has been moved up from Northwest Arkansas to Omaha. Alec Marsh with his 5.32 ERA, a 1.6 whip in 47 innings with 28 earned runs, 56 strikeouts, 24 walks. And then Will Klein, who is a reliever, 3.4 ERA in 29 innings or so, but 44 Ks in the 29 innings. Those are the 3 guys who have been moved up from Northwest to Omaha. And the speculation is that with Rave being moved up to Omaha, that Dairon Blanco, who's been playing pretty phenomenally with Omaha, could be called up to the big league level to play center field, and Jackie Bradley Jr. could be DFA'd. That could be today, or they could just be moving Rave up, and then he's going to be playing in center field with Lofton on the IL, although Lofton, was not necessarily playing that position, but just moving around in different spots. But Blanco and Samad Taylor playing different spots, but Blanco playing center field. There could be some sort of a platoon with Drew Waters in center field, where Drew Waters could just be left alone as a left-handed hitter taking on the righties, and Blanco can be a guy that's in there versus the left-handed hitters and play center field. Could be the case. Not a big-time prospect. He's 30 years old, but he's having a great season. And could be more of a part of the next few years as a 4th/5th outfielder, but not somebody that you're going, this guy was a second-round pick 2 years ago, and he's just raking at AAA. Let's bring him up and see what he can do. No, the guy's been around. So Dairon Blanco. We'll see if he gets a call up to the big league level.
Of guys with...
By the way, he played 5 games last year with the Royals. That was his major league debut. He's played 5 games in the big leagues, and those 5 games came in September of last year.
Of guys on the current roster with 90 or more plate appearances, he would be the second oldest player on the major league roster. Third with Salvi and Jackie Bradley Jr. Just ahead of Hunter Dozier, who had 91. Actually, sorry, I need to make that cutoff at 91, 92 plate appearances because Hunter Dozier had 91. So
he's older than Dozier.
Yeah, he's just younger than Dozier, younger than Matt Duffy.
I see.
Salvi and Jackie Bradley Jr. have him beat right now.
But so far in AAA, he is batting .350 with a almost .450 on base percentage and a OPS of 900.
Bring him up.
He's doing well.
Sure.
He's doing well. He's got 35 strikeouts and 22 walks in 208 plate appearances.
This is my way of highlighting the youth of the Royals lineup in a positive way.
See? There you go. This guy coming up. Yeah. Of course, then the issue would be all of these guys that you've drafted in the first couple of rounds, high draft picks over the last 3, 4, 5 years, that the 30-year-old would be the guy that would come up and have the crazy
Always
numbers.
About the negatives with you.
I know. Sorry.
Like
That's the one thing.
You can't just sit around and enjoy 18 wins.
I know.
They've won 18 times. Have you thrown 18 parties in your life for the Royals this year?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
I've drank alone 47 times, so I'm committed.
What's our record? 18-47. How we ever won 18 games. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. So MVS had a softball game on Friday night,
Yeah.
and it's a miracle that Josh and Sterling gave up airtime so that some Chiefs players could talk on the microphone, and I thought it was great with George Karlaftis and Creed Humphrey.
I checked the
holding
stats
court.
today.
Yes.
Sterling thanked George for his time at the 4-minute mark of the show, as in to say, thanks for sitting down. Feel free to head back out there. 20 minutes
was a long
later,
time.
he handed his headphones off to, I believe, he might have gotten Trey Smith, and Creed
was
gave them
Trey.
to Sky Moore shortly thereafter.
Because it went from Karlaftis to Creed to Sky Moore and Trey. I do remember. See, I was listening.
See, you were locked in,
Loved
and unlike George Karlaftis, who simply did not want to swing a baseball bat, that was really our big advantage there. And everybody who sat down with us was a treat. Willie Gay came and took a microphone out of my hand for like 30 seconds, then ran to the outfield. That man has more energy than the rest of that stadium combined, and that stadium had a lot of energy.
Was he playing outfield because he's more of a coverage linebacker? He can cover more field out there?
I think he wanted to show Spags his lateral agility.
Where was Drew Tranquil? Tranquil was like, sorry, Willie, I got this.
He pitched
play.
for a little while,
Oh, did he?
actually. Drew
Oh,
Tranquil
he
did.
was out there,
yes,
too.
he was. He was there, though.
Fun. What should we play from these clips that we have here? Karlaftis, Trey Smith, Sky Moore, Noah Gray.
I think George Karlaftis spent the most time with us, and we could spend a little bit of time talking about what he thought about Joe Cullen. You even get the Chris Jones mention here as well, but he had been sitting down for like 15 minutes at this point, and he and Stu were just chopping it up. So Sterling asked about that impact of Joe Cullen that we talked so much about last year, how it impacted the defensive line.
I think it starts with him, honestly, with him and Coach Braden. You know, Terry Braden, the assistant D-line coach, and Coach Cullen. You know, it starts really with them. You know, before that, it's Spags and then down. But Coach Cullen's incredible. You know, he puts us in positions to do what we do best. You know, we formulate game plans. You know, it starts really in OTAs with the coaching and just the fundamentals that he teaches. He's done it forever. You know, and he knows how to do it. He knows how to develop rushers, and you know, if you just buy in and you trust in what he says, I think you'll end up being a really good player at the end of the day. You know, Chris told me how fortunate I am to have a coach like that is a complete coach, you know, just in terms of the run stopping, the pass rushing, and everything in between, you know. So it's been a blessing to be under such a great coach, and you know, looking forward to being with him for another year.
I love that they sat down, they let their hair down a little bit. Karlaftis dropped a couple of S-bombs during.
I heard one that Dylan caught, I think.
Yeah, no, there was two of them.
Were there two?
There were two of them. Now, I don't know if they were caught on the radio. I was listening on the app.
Okay, I know Dylan had a kick save and a butte at least once.
Would not have mattered if Dylan heard those in real time as I was listening to it, because it would not have been cut out. Because I was listening on the app. One of the beauties of listening on the app is that whatever goes over the air, or whatever happens, you know, you hear it.
Exactly.
Whether it actually goes over the air terrestrially or not. But, yeah, they were enjoying themselves. They were just sort of talking and not necessarily at a podium or even really like in training camp sitting down with a headset on and doing a Q&A with a host there. It's a little more buttoned up. They were hanging out, having some drinks, getting ready to play softball with their buddies, and just talking about not even football. They were just talking about softball, just talking about life, just talking about different things. And Karlaftis was definitely the guy that in class, when the teacher asks for a volunteer, or even somebody like at an auditorium or something looking for a volunteer, and you sort of just slide down in your chair a little bit so you're not seen. He was that guy. But Karlaftis, you going to get out there? I don't know, really.
More of a water polo guy.
Yes. Have you ever swung a bat? No.
No, he said.
Ever in his life.
He made contact late in the game. We were there, and I did
with like
see
an
it.
alien
so.
or with the...
It wasn't great contact either way. If there's alien life currently, there's a lot of UFO stuff going around right now. That was about as reliable as his swing.
His contact was made with Patrick Mahomes. It was an alien.
And please, if George Karlaftis ever hits Patrick Mahomes, that will be just can't do that. Defensive players know. I think George knows.
Yeah.
But the one little bit of that felt like a little fun tidbit is towards the end, him saying, "Hey, Chris told me how lucky I am to have Joe Cullen as I enter the league here, someone who has done it all." And I don't think that's necessarily Chris Jones throwing flack at any particular coach or anything like that. But he has had a variety of coaches, both at his position and at defensive coordinator, going back through college, obviously. He's played a lot of football. Karlaftis hasn't played very much football, professionally or otherwise. But for all the talk we heard about Chris Jones and Joe Cullen last year, for that love to make it all the way through, that Karloff kind of mentioned it as a fact offhand, just made my antenna-esque alien antenna pop up.
Because he doesn't know any better. He's never had a defensive line coach in the NFL except for Joe Cullen.
Exactly.
So when you hear from different people that are like, no, you got to appreciate this, just as the Chiefs rookies and players don't know anything different other than playing for the Chiefs organization, and Andy Reid and Brett Veach as a GM, Clark Hunt as the owner, and the success that has happened since then. I mean, all these guys that are still on rookie contracts have won. Well, still on a rookie contract, you've got one Super Bowl.
Right.
Because Snead would have been drafted in 2020, so would not won in 2019. But rookie contracts, everybody that's on a rookie contract, except for those that are just signed, have a Super Bowl.
Yep.
And have, at least one Super Bowl and maybe 2 AFC Championship wins. Lamar Hunt trophies to their name. So that's all they've known. Sky Moore, all he's known is winning a Super Bowl.
Right.
Isaiah Pacheco, all he's known is winning a Super Bowl. And that is incredibly lucky to get drafted in that situation. And then it's a matter of taking advantage of that luck and doing what you need to do to make sure that you are taking care of your business so that you can continue to be a part of that organization. There was a higher draft pick that did not do his part to continue to be a part of the organization, and they moved on. Was that before 2019 that they moved on from Speaks, or was that before 2020? So did he get a ring?
I don't think he got a ring.
So that was before 2019? Because 2018 was when he was drafted, correct?
Yeah, I think they might have cut
so
it. Yeah,
then
he
2020.
was 2018 in that second round.
So then he would have been cut in 2020, right? Or was it 2021? Hell, I don't know.
He, there's a lot of practice squad transactions.
Falls
USFL legend.
Falls down a well, eyes go cross, kicked by a mule, they go uncross. I don't know.
That can't be it because he's never on the ground. They waived him September 2020.
Okay. So he did technically get a ring.
I guess so. It doesn't even show up on his Football Reference because he wasn't on the active roster, I guess.
Yeah, but if he was a part of the team in any way, shape, or form that year, like everybody
should be there,
got a ring. Like practice squad dudes get a ring. A guy that showed up and delivered something from Amazon got a ring. Just everybody really that's a part of the organization gets a ring. But that was a guy that did not do enough to keep his standing within the organization. He gets drafted in 2019 or 2018. Mm-hmm. Isn't all that good, but never on the ground. 2019, shows up to camp overweight. 2020, even though he shows up to camp a little more motivated, they're still like, nah, we've already soured on you. You got to go, man. Sorry. But no, I'm in better shape now. Yeah, sorry.
Most of the suspension in there.
Yeah, so that was rough. These rookies, have to take advantage of, the opportunity afforded to them, and it seems like, that group last year certainly has done that, and we'll see what this group can do. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Still Trey Smith, Sky Moore, Noah Gray to weigh in as they were at the softball, MVS softball on Friday night. That was a lot of fun to listen to, and if you were out there, certainly a lot of fun. Josh Briscoe, Sterling Holmes on the broadcast, Stephen St. John on the mic and introducing different players. That was fun as well on that Friday night. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk with Nick Shook coming up at 11 o'clock, NFL.com. We'll talk with Max Reaper, Royals Review coming up at noon. Mick Schaefer, KSHB 41 Sports Director at 1 o'clock. More Zone next.
Take the show with you by listening live on 810WHB.com, in the 810 mobile app, or by subscribing to The Zone wherever you get your podcasts.
You got to make sure you got that roof over your head. Sometimes that's metaphorical. In this sense, it's very, very literal, which is why I go to Shamrock Roofing and Construction. We got up on my roof, and Chase from Shamrock explained what they were looking for. You don't have to go up on the roof with them, but I had not been on the roof of my home, and I wanted to know what was going on up there. So I learned a ton from them, and we learned that my roof was still in good shape. We even talked about ways that we can extend and preserve the life of our roof. And I tell you all that so you know that if you don't need work done up there, the people at Shamrock Roofing and Construction will tell you. If you do need that work, you can trust that they know exactly what they're looking for. Because at Shamrock, they do things a little bit differently than your average roofing and construction company. They have a familiar name with a trusted process, and they're family-owned, so they treat their employees and customers like family, too. It's all in the family at Shamrock. And when you need a new roof, it pays to have the best team in the game. Just one call and you can get a brand new roof with the best service and best prices from the best hometown team in the business. One call does it all to take you from an estimate out to a homeowner celebrating a win with a brand new roof that you can be proud of. All you got to do is give them that one call at 913-850-6556 or visit them online at shamrockroofer.com. No citrus required. Shamrock Roofing and Construction. One call does it all at 913-850-6556.
Hey, Kansas City, Stephen St. John here. You've heard me talk about Polymagic and...
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, and Drake. We're going to give away $25 in a gift card to Jack Stack as Father's Day is right around the corner, and they've got a cool Father's Day package for you. We'll tell you more about that as we'll be giving away some gift cards this week to Jack Stack, so be tuning in for that. 913-912-4810, 913-912-4810. We'll do some Learn Funniest Best from the weekend. There's a number of things I'd like to even play along the way from that'll be Learn Funniest Best as we get to some of those. Let's hear real quick before we take a break. Sky Moore at the MVS softball game on Friday night. Sky Moore weighing in on what he learned last year and his excitement level for year two.
I feel like the NFL, just becoming a pro, was a bit of a learning curve for me coming from the MAC. You know, things are done a little different. So
yeah,
I definitely I took my time. I needed to learn and develop into the receiver I've become. But yeah, for sure, I feel like year two is definitely you'll see a more comfortable Sky out there, and I'm excited.
More comfortable sky. That's like what's going on right now. So not necessarily this weekend. It's comfy sky, like 70s, nice day. Hopefully that's the case because there's a lot riding on the shoulders of guys progressing. It's a lot riding on the shoulders of the expectation and the hope of what these players in the wide receiver room can be.
Well, it's like we talked about last week, even with Justin Reed talking about how late into the year the defense was comfortable with everything and so many moving parts. It goes back to that whole logic of like, hey, it's a little easier to look back, especially when you've got a Lombardi in your pocket, to look back at the year's struggles before and to kind of see how far you've actually come, as opposed to taking questions like that in real time and maybe getting kind of like defensive. I'm as comfortable as I can be right now, man. We're all trying to get good at this, but for Sky Moore now to have the benefit of the payoff in the Super Bowl, not just winning it, but his first touchdown of his Chiefs career, having the benefit of that playoff run, and now this entire other offseason where this may be an overused or completely made up metaphor for a complicated NFL offense. So forgive me either way, but you're not learning the alphabet anymore, right? Like you're not just learning the grammar of an offense. Now you're starting to do some creative writing, perhaps, or at least reading full chapter books. And I really do think, and this is I asked Noah Gray about this really briefly towards the end of our conversation. We could play later, but he did not go in as much depth as Sky Moore did, and Sky Moore went a good 25 seconds or so of self-analysis there.
So he didn't go in more as depth. Wow.
No, and it can look, he's been here longer than Sky has, so he's probably well graduated out of the deer in the headlights kind of phase. But there really is that constant question for me of what it takes to get to those levels deeper in an Andy Reid offense and to see that comfort grow. And I think for Sky Moore, at least that jump from year one to year two, in terms of comfort and terminology, has to be enormous.
Yeah, and that is certainly what a lot of people are planning on and hoping for. It's certainly what the Chiefs are planning on.
The Chiefs are borderline betting on it.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, but not at the Chiefs facility.
That's exactly right. So it's borderline. I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
They're away from the facility, but would that be betting on a game? Can you bet on the numbers?
Wow, can Andy Reid bet on Sky Moore futures from his house if it's not at team facilities? That seems illegitimate to me.
Seems like he would have an inside view on whether or not he could win that bet.
I think so too. Yeah.
Is that the gambling version of insider trading?
Yes, it really is. Insider trading is Andy Reid taking the Clyde Edwards-Helaire unders.
They have thrown the ball 25 times to Sky Moore in Week 18.
Yeah.
Why?
What's going on here?
They're down by 15, yet they keep just throwing screen passes to Sky Moore.
Andy Reid looks thrilled after that one. Weird.
He lost 3 yards.
These are all jokes.
Kansas City, this is MJ Melendez. Tickets for Less has the best seats at the best prices, and you never pay per ticket service fees, saving you big at checkout. Score.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you, Josh Briscoe, Drake. We head up until 2 o'clock. We will talk with Max Reaper coming up at the noon hour. Right now, let's continue talking some NFL football. Nick Shook from NFL.com joining us as we've talked a little bit about the series that he is writing at NFL.com with the next-gen stats and the top 10 players in certain different categories. And he joins us now to talk about that. Nick Shook, NFL.com. Nick, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Well, we really appreciate it. Let's start off with just the series overall and coming up with the idea to look at all of these different categories. And I guess when you sit back and you say, okay, I'm going to do this, well, where do you land on which particular stats you find to be the most important that would have a pretty good snapshot of some of the best players at certain positions doing certain things?
Well, this is sort of an evolution of what Next Gen Stats has, allowed us to accomplish, I think, over the last 6 or 7 years. Next Gen Stats began in 2016, with the advancement in player tracking data. You got chips in every player's pads. You got a chip in the football. We can measure everything in real time. And with the help of algorithms and people who are much better at math than me, we have kind of figured out a way to, interpret that data, whether it's through, speed or direction or anything else. We get all kinds of crazy advanced metrics that just weren't possible a decade ago with the NFL. But, it began, 7 years ago with me just kind of being tasked with, hey, here are the numbers. Learn it, figure it out, tell us what's important and what's not. So I spent a lot of time doing it and have gained a pretty intimate understanding of what matters, what doesn't, what's contextual information, what's the most important information, what's kind of secondary supplementary information. And we've been doing this series for a few years now where every summer I kind of take a look back at the previous season and I try to identify some difference makers that won't show up in traditional stats. Everybody likes sacks with pass rushers, but that doesn't really tell the whole story. A lot of guys can be effective by registering a ton of, QB pressures or hurries or stuff like that, turnovers caused by pressure, which I think that last stat is one of the most important in measuring a disruptor, which is one of our 5 categories that we kind of go into. So I take a number of different statistics, with each goal of each piece being, hey, who's the best coverage defender? How often does he deny an opposing offense the opportunity to put points on the board, which is what we get in targeted EPA or expected points added? How often does this defender, disrupt the opposing offense, whether it's a sack, it's a turnover caused by pressure, it's just a pressure, it's a hurry, whatever that is. And we kind of go through all these different categories, and I've established a formula over the last few years to rely on, you set minimums. They got to have an X amount of snaps. They got to be able to, with coverage defenders, they got to force tight windows at this percentage or they're not doing it consistently enough for me. And we've kind of been able to go through that process. And every year it turns out, really surprising results. I'm sure you guys want to talk about, the receivers who catch the most passes over expectation, which is Richie James. I was stunned. And the thing is when I do this, not to be too long-winded on this, but when I do this, every year I open it up and I always get a surprise or two. But when I opened up those numbers, put my filters in and started sorting through the data, I said, Richie James? Really? I mean, I know he had a good year with the Giants. The Giants didn't exactly have the most explosive offense through the air. Now, it was explosive enough to get Daniel Jones paid, but it wasn't up there with the elite group. So for him to show up, it was a surprise, but it's fun because it makes you look beyond just the stars, and it makes you kind of acknowledge and recognize some accomplishments of guys who are lesser known.
So let's start there. There's a few things I wanted to get into, but as you end there, let's continue that conversation about the wide receivers and the catch rate over expected. And coming in at number 1 is Richie James. And not only a surprise for a lot of people, certainly around here a surprise, because oddly enough, Nick, the conversation with the Chiefs, while they don't have that number 1 wide receiver, and I think nationally the view is they need to improve at that spot, even though Travis Kelce is a dynamite playmaker, difference maker, but that wide receiver group, they go from Tyreek Hill to then Juju Smith-Schuster to then now it's a combination of MVS, or is it Kadarius Toney stepping up, or Sky Moore or Rashee Rice? And when we look at this Chiefs wide receiver group, we feel like, the main conversation around here is Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and Rashee Rice are on the team. Richie James and Justin Watson, they signed, and pretty decent chance they're on the team. But people love Justin Ross. John Ross is certainly turning some heads in mini camp, when you can just run fast and not actually have to do much else. So he's turning some heads there. But there's been some people that are like, well, Richie James, you can just slide in Justin Ross and Richie James may be out. That's been an interesting part of the conversation because seeing this, I don't know that it changes much of a discussion around here, but it is odd that he comes in at number one and there are a number of people that feel like he doesn't really even have his roster spot solidified on this team.
Right. I think that's the product of, if you look at his career production, he never broke 500 yards until last year. He had 1 touchdown per season in his first 3 years, but he was also playing in an offense that was run-reliant in San Francisco. They had a number of different quarterbacks playing because of Jimmy Garoppolo's health struggles. They're one of the best teams, in the NFL at scheming up the ground game with the implementation of Kyle Juszczyk as both a blocker and a threat in the passing game. They got a good offensive line. They're disciplined. They've elevated guys that, frankly, were cut by other teams, off the practice squad or, man 54 on a 53-man roster, like a Raheem Mostert, for example. They've elevated them to, a status where they can get jobs elsewhere and put together nice careers because of their run game. So I think oftentimes you see receivers struggle to make a huge difference in the passing game, traditionally speaking, in San Francisco. So then he goes to New York last year, and he plays in an offense that's, engineered by Brian Dable and company, the rest of his staff. And you got Daniel Jones, who is a quarterback who was at a crossroads entering last year. And he puts up career numbers, 57 catches, 569 yards, 4 touchdowns. But that's not numbers that make you want to break the bank to give him, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the beauty of the Chiefs, is that the way that they've structured their team and why they can remain so competitive is they have their quarterback, an all-world quarterback who is secured over the long term. They're going to have to restructure that deal with Patrick Mahomes eventually, but they've got him in place. And what they've acknowledged, come to realize, and I think that's why 2021 was so important to them, is that, look, we don't need the highly paid receiver out there to make our offense run. In fact, we can go with a number of guys that aren't going to command top dollar because we believe that much in our system and our quarterback. And we got to find guys who fit, who can make consistent catches over expectation. It's kind of the money ball of the NFL a little bit when you think about it, because they're not going for the top tier guys. So I think he makes a ton of sense in joining this roster. And it doesn't cost him a lot of money to take a flyer on a guy who, hey, let's look at the advanced metrics. Let's look at his tape last year. Oh, he was playing better than people realize. He was playing better than the raw statistics would indicate. That's what a lot of those guys on that roster are right now. You saw Juju find success in that offense last year, and this is Juju, who was essentially, not necessarily on his last deal, but he wasn't a guy that people were going to, give a bunch of money to anymore. And he found a ton of success. He ended up pretty high in these rankings as well. I think it is kind of a microcosm of this offense in general. It's such a well-oiled machine. It's coached by, a guy in Andy Reid who has been in this game for so long. He really knows how to extract the most out of all of his players. And it all comes back to quarterback. So I think it's a perfect fit for him, but it also sets up a really interesting camp battle, because if you look at this group of receivers, Kadarius Toney is probably the only guy I look at as like, oh, he could be a potential superstar. And that's a guy who came out of Florida with those expectations and never fit in New York. And, of course, now they go back to New York to the well to get another guy. So it's a lot of fun to watch them, beyond the fact that they put up a lot of points. It's just the fact that they can make, they can really, capitalize and get the most out of some of these guys that other teams wouldn't be able to use.
And it's interesting the connection the Chiefs have with New York in an odd way. I mean, Brian Dable's been, in Kansas City as an offensive coordinator before, and then obviously Andy Reid's relationship with Mike Kafka for so many years as, quarterbacks coach and, moving up, and was expected to be the next offensive coordinator if Eric Bieniemy were to get a job before he did a year ago, that Mike Kafka would just simply be elevated. And it didn't look like that was going to happen anytime soon. And so he goes to the Giants, and they get to know Kadarius Toney for a little bit, and the Chiefs end up trading for Kadarius Toney. So certainly there was, had to be conversations and discussions about between Daboll and Mike Kafka and the Chiefs about Kadarius Toney. And I think certainly the same thing maybe with Richie James. The expected catch rate for Ricky James, and then the catch rate over expected, that first part, his expected catch rate was about 70%. Is that, his ability to get open? Is it, on target throws or off target throws that end up being catches for Richie James? Like that particular part that's calculated, the expected catch rate, how does that go into it? And I wonder how much over expected he would have to be if this offense and Patrick Mahomes is throwing him the football as opposed to Daniel Jones.
Yeah, see, that's what's fun. And I got into a little back and forth with the Giants fan who's trying to process the fact that his team, let a receiver who ended up number one on these rankings go elsewhere. Daniel Jones threw him open so many times it just helped him out. Well, it's not necessarily exactly how this is calculated. Because we're using tracking data and we're using it at different points in the play, what a lot of the expected catch rate is built on is speed of player, direction, and nearest defenders. What's the proximity? Are we getting tight window throws often? Are there defenders blanketed all over him? Because that, depth of target also matters, because it's harder to complete a 35-yard pass than it is to complete a 5-yard pass oftentimes. So you think about all these different things, and you think, how difficult of a catch would this be at the point when the ball arrives? That's what really builds your expected catch rate. Now, of course, it's going to be more likely that you're going to complete that pass when you have a phenomenal quarterback throwing to you. So there is, you can't necessarily just look at these things completely separate in separate vacuums. But we're relying more on the situation the receiver's in when the ball arrives than the quarterback necessarily throwing him open all the time. It does help a little bit, of course, but an expected catch rate of 70.4 means he's going to be open pretty often, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it does kind of credit him for getting open. And then the fact that he catches 11% over that total, that's telling you that he's making the contested catches, the more difficult catches, the catches that the math says he probably shouldn't make. He's doing it at a consistent rate. And, of course, volume also matters because guys who see 180 targets or whatever, a Justin Jefferson, inevitably are not going to have as high of a catch rate over expected, which is why I always get destroyed for this piece every year online, which I understand. Look, how is Justin Jefferson not number one on this ranking? Well, it's because he saw a higher volume, whereas Richie James saw 70 targets. So that increases your percentages sometimes, but because we're looking with minimum set, he makes the minimum, and because of the target, he can't control how many targets he's seen. That's what ends up pushing up there. So basically what it's telling you is the numbers are telling you that on a consistent basis, given the targets that he's seeing over a season, he is most consistently making the catches that are not expected to be caught because of the situation in which he's seeing the ball at the time it arrives. And that right there is commendable.
Nick Shook is our guest from NFL.com. Is there an innate advantage in this particular ranking if there are receivers that maybe are bigger and just sort of their game is maybe being better at making contested catches? Because coming in at number 2 is a name that is also connected with the Kansas City Chiefs because there were a lot of us, myself included, that really wanted the Chiefs to draft George Pickens, and he was on the board when the Chiefs then traded down. They got Sky Moore 4 picks later, but they traded down, and that pick ended up being Tyler Thornton, and then I think the next pick ended up being George Pickens to the Steelers, and Pickens was number 2 in this list because he was so good down the field and made some contested catches. Is that what separated him from maybe some of the other receivers? Because I think most would say, Richie James, what a surprise, he's number 1. I would throw in, George Pickens, a surprise, who's number 2. Is it, simply his ability that he's got the rare talent to just be able to come down with catches when he's got defenders around him?
Yeah, in fact, if you look at this list, the majority of these guys are bigger receivers. They're at least taller receivers. You got like a Cooper Kupp at 5, but he's a master at getting open. You've got a Devontae Smith at 8, but we know what he brings to the table, right? But most of these guys are going to be bigger guys, and that's because when we take in this data, we're talking about separation, depth of target, and everything else. Well, it helps when you're bigger because even if a guy's draped all over you, he's going to have a harder time interrupting and disrupting that pass attempt from being completed when he's got a bigger body to work around or fight through. So Pickens was big on that, but really what made Pickens so great last year was what we saw in the highlight reel, which is he was phenomenal at making the highlight reel spectacular grabs in traffic, one-on-one down the sideline, things that just make you say, wow, this kid's got incredible potential. He was great at that, and it showed up in the numbers, which is really satisfying when you know how a season the guy had, and then you pull out the data and you say, oh, there it is. It's showing up right in the numbers. Mike Williams being at number 3, that's another one because he's another bigger-bodied target who often wins by, boxing guys out, going up and high-pointing the football. And then, of course, it's not a surprise that you see a tight end, Dallas Goedert, at number 4. You typically get a tight end every year. Sometimes the names change, but this is a guy who, often thrived because of the same thing. So being bigger definitely helps in this exercise for sure.
Yeah, and Dallas Goedert made a couple of pretty good contested catches in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs too. So Chiefs fans saw that up close and personal in the Super Bowl. Visiting with Nick Shook, NFL.com. All right, disruptors. That's certainly something that we talked about last week when this came out. Chris Jones coming in at number 5 of the disruptors in the NFL, but number 1 among defensive tackles. And there were 3 defensive tackles that made the top 10. Javon Hargrave at number 7 and Quinnen Williams at number 10. Dexter Lawrence just missed the cut in the top 10. But Chris Jones, number 5 overall and number 1 among defensive tackles. And you had mentioned something when you were discussing the disruptors category and things that you really focus on and those turnovers created by pressure. And the fact that Chris Jones was number 2 in all of football, only behind Micah Parsons in the turnovers created by pressure, I think is pretty interesting. He was number 4 in sacks, but number 2 in those turnovers created by pressure. Is that simply pressures there? It results in an interception? Does it have to be a sack, strip, fumble? A pressure from Chris Jones that results in maybe the quarterback being flushed and then fumbles? How do you come up with or how does Next Gen Stats, you think, come up with the turnovers created by pressure that Chris Jones is credited with 4, Micah Parsons most in the NFL with 5?
Yeah, that's basically how it is right there. Is if you're pressuring a quarterback and he throws an interception, that counts as a turnover caused by pressure. A strip sack fumble causes it as well. You hit it right on the head there. And what's interesting is it's usually much more difficult for a defensive end to be able to pull this off than an edge rusher, obviously, because look, you're tasked with stopping the run. You're tasked with pressuring the quarterback through the interior of the offensive line, where often you're meeting multiple blockers at a time. It's just more difficult. And yet he put together a phenomenally consistent season in that it shows up in the numbers with the 4. Because, I tried to use a cross comparison there because Aaron Donald shows up on this list every year, when he's healthy, and he outperformed Aaron Donald in almost every category. I mean, Aaron Donald, a guy who constantly disrupts games, 1 turnover caused by pressure in 2021, which was a phenomenal year for him. You got Chris Jones with 4, and I thought none was better than when they actually moved him outside and they put him against Hakeem Adeniji, in that key 3rd down in the AFC Championship game, and he blows right through him outside shoulder and gets the stop there as well. I mean, he had a phenomenal, fantastic season. He's a great player. He's in the prime of his career. He doesn't really get recognized as often as he should, and he had a hell of a run in the postseason as the Chiefs were on their way to win the Super Bowl. So to see him show up here, it felt kind of vindicating for me, especially because I'm taking a little fire for him in the past for not including him in some groups based on these numbers. So it was nice to see it show up. 15.5 sacks coming from basically a 3 technique.
Mm-hmm.
Not something that you see all the time, not in today's game when we're so dependent on edge rushers. So he had a great year, and I was really glad that it showed up in the numbers. And it was just really impressive when you compared it against some of the best players in football in the last few years to see him right up there or better than some of those guys.
How close do you think, because he's going through a contract extension conversation right now with the Chiefs, and he's going to get that, and this was an offseason where a lot of defensive tackles signed contracts and still waiting on Quinnen Williams to see what he ends up getting from the Jets. But how close do you think Chris Jones will get to Aaron Donald? Will it be, 23.5 right now is the annual average value? If Quinnen Williams gets 25, does it come in the middle at like 28 for Chris Jones? Or because he's doing some things that are, better than Aaron Donald, does he have to get close to that, you think? The defensive tackle market was a little deflated this year than what I thought it would be. But if you're looking at it, how close do you think he'll get to Aaron Donald money when the Chiefs and Chris Jones, which we ultimately believe will get something done in an extension this offseason?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to get up to that Aaron Donald number because I think the Rams were also paying a bit of a "don't retire on us" tax. Back when he signed.
That's
like,
a great
we
point.
want you to keep playing.
That's
we just won a Super Bowl. Here's 31.6
really good point.
a year.
Yeah,
because the rest of the market, there's a pretty big gap between Donald and Jeffrey Simmons, who just got a new deal this offseason as well at 23.5. And if there's a guy you want to pay long term, it's Jeffrey Simmons. I mean, he's among the best, and he's got a ton of career left ahead of him. And Chris Jones is a little bit older than that. So I don't know if necessarily you get the big number, immediately that tails off, or they backload it, and maybe he never ends up seeing that entire total. But I mean, he's coming up on his 29th birthday here in a few weeks, so he's still in his prime, but he's not quite as young as somebody who just entered the draft, a couple years ago, right? So that's like where Quinnen Williams is going to be when he gets his deal. And Quinnen Williams doesn't quite have as much of a demonstrated history of production as Chris Jones does. And the Chiefs are also dealing with trying to balance their cap and remain a Super Bowl contender. They're not a team that's in the position to shower a bunch of money on one of these guys and take a big chunk of their cap like some other teams will. We saw that with how they just let Orlando Brown walk away. They say, hey, look, you're going to get paid elsewhere, but it's not going to be us. And sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. So it's a bit of a balancing act. I think he does get up near the Dexter Lawrence type money, maybe the Daron Payne numbers. I mean, he's going to because he has to in order to, keep ahead of the market and keep him happy. But I don't think he quite gets into Donald range. That would be a bit of a surprise unless they were able to creatively structure, which I will say this. In the last 2 years, one thing I have definitely learned thanks to the New Orleans Saints is that the salary cap is a myth and can be manipulated to the end of time.
I would say it's a myth to a certain degree. I feel like the salary cap will never stop you from signing one guy. But eventually you do have to then sort of bite the bullet or take your medicine or whatever way you want to describe that because, they did have to walk from Tyreek Hill and it worked out. But I think the Chris Jones thing is much different than Tyreek Hill because Chris Jones could be compared to not to the same level of one of the best we've ever seen, but he could be compared to the Patrick Mahomes of the defense. And it's one thing to say we can move on from Tyreek Hill. When you've got Patrick Mahomes and also Travis Kelce, it's another thing to say, well, we'll just trade Chris Jones because it worked out with Tyreek Hill. And then you go, yeah, but who's the guy there that will then say, yeah, but you've got this guy and that guy. Like Chris Jones does so much for this defense to where, I put it in a separate category of the Tyreek Hill part of it. And I think the Tyreek Hill was one where the Chiefs said, look, we get to a certain number. And they've been pretty disciplined, Nick. It feels like Brett Veach has in this is the number we're going to offer you. This is what we think the value is. You want more than that? Well, then best of luck. They did it with Orlando Brown. They unfortunately had to do it with Trent Williams when they were coveting him. They've done it with Tyrann Mathieu. They did it with Tyreek Hill. They've done it with different players that it was this is what we're offering you. And this is all that we're going to give you. And if you get more somewhere else, then best of luck.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's a fantastic illustration of two of the best general managers in football right now, and Howie Roseman and Brett Veach. In that, first off, we're talking about different positions when you talk about comparing these contracts, right? What did we just talk about earlier with the receivers and how they realize that they don't need that top-tier receiver to still find success offensively?
Yeah.
So you can get a receiver. You can go out and get a couple guys that are going to fit in your offense and make a difference. It's a lot harder to find guys in the trenches. And what do Veach and Rosen do really well? They do two things. They pay the guys that are the best in the trenches on both sides of the ball, Orlando Brown excluded, which I don't know necessarily that he's worth the money that he ended up wanting or getting.
Right.
And they also draft really well in preparation for future departures. George Karlaftis being one of those examples last year. Frank Clark, you knew you probably weren't going to keep. You get Karlaftis, you get another edge guy that you can kind of work in as a rookie, get him into a position where you can take more snaps as a second-year player and make an impact. But you can't necessarily find a Chris Jones, an interior lineman, that easily. You can't draft those guys that come in and make a difference immediately every year as consistently as you can in other positions. And so I think that what they've done, you also give Veach a ton of credit for how they immediately rebuilt their offensive line. And that's just great scouting, great drafting, and a great job in free agency and really using everything at your disposal to address your needs. And what they've done is they've ensured that on both sides of the ball, the trenches are solidified. They're as strong as possible because that's where football starts. And everybody can talk to you about receivers and quarterbacks and DBs and everything else. But I'm telling you right now, if you can't block and you can't rush the passer and stop the run, you're never going to have a chance. And these guys know that, and they approach building their team that way, and that's why they're among the best in the NFL.
Nick Shook, NFL.com. Last one for you real quick. You wrote about a few days ago about the Vikings fielding calls from teams on Danielle Hunter. He is now skipping mandatory minicamp because of the contract dispute going on there. Does he play with the Vikings this year, or is he ultimately going to get traded? Not that the Chiefs would be involved because there's a large contract that have to come along with that when they're already working with Chris Jones, but that's one of the better defensive ends in the league that's now potentially available for a suitor that wants to pay the premium for the draft pick and then also the contract.
Yeah, I feel like this is the latest step in what probably should have happened in Minnesota a year ago. And this kind of speaks to where the Vikings are right now because they won 13 games last year, but the whole time they felt like a team that wasn't really as good as their record indicated. And we saw that once they got to the postseason, and really when they played the Eagles early in the season, that they're not as good as their record would suggest. And I think a lot of that was because they were hanging on to a thread there with a new regime where they're like, hey, we have these veteran players that can make an impact, can help us win immediately, but they're not in our long-term plans. And you've seen that since then. Adam Thielen, gone. Trade Zadarius Smith to the Browns. Yeah. Eric Kendricks, gone. You continue to go down that list. A lot of these contributors that they had, Dalvin Cook, they released. They know they have to turn over this roster to be more financially solvent long term and get younger. And I think Kirk Cousins is going to end up being the next guy after this year that also goes. So Hunter fits right in that narrative of, hey, we got to get rid of these guys while they still have some value, get some assets back for them as we do a fluid rebuild of sorts, kind of like what the Eagles did a few years ago as well. But I don't know if Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah is going to necessarily handle it as well as Howie Roseman is. It's a tough task for sure, especially for a young GM like him. So I'm not surprised at all that they, were fielding calls on him and that Daniil's not going to show up for camp, because I feel like he's just the next step in that process. It's interesting, though, because, he only has 1 year left on this deal. The last 2 years of his deal are void years. It's $13.1 million cap number right now, and the Vikings can save $5.5 million if they were to move him. So the numbers aren't massive. They're not necessarily prohibitive to working a deal. It's just that the timing is a little interesting that they initiated this process so late with some of these guys. I think he'll be highly coveted. He's coming up on coming up on his age 29, age 30 seasons. He had that neck issue that had robbed him of some significant playing time a couple years ago, but he had a great season last year. He's definitely a valuable guy. So it'll be one to monitor. I do not anticipate that he would play in Minnesota if they follow this trend. It's just it'll be very interesting to see what deal gets that done, what offer gets that done.
Nick Shook, NFL.com. Nick, great stuff. Really appreciate the time. Enjoyed the conversation, and really cool stuff there with the series, with the Next Gen Zats and the top 10 different players that come up with these certain things. Thank you for the time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a blast.
Absolutely. There's Nick Shook. Good stuff, man. Go to NFL.com and check that out and see all of the different categories there. The cover men, the deep passers, the disruptors, the wide receivers, the series there. It's really cool stuff in Next Gen Stats. And Chris Jones coming through and how dominant he is in the numbers, even with, matching up with the eye test of what we've seen Chris Jones do this year and being number 2 in the NFL in turnovers created by pressure, only one behind Micah Parsons, and we know he should have been tied with Micah Parsons because he had the turnover with Derek Carr, which didn't result in a sack because of the roughing the passer call, a non-sack strip fumble recovery for one Chris Jones, and which would have put him at 16.5 sacks, which would have made him number 2 in the NFL in sacks. Think about that. With that sack, he would have been number 2 in the NFL in sacks and number 1 in the NFL in turnovers created by pressure. Would have been Chris Jones, a defensive tackle, where he would be then surrounded by a bunch of guys who are edge rushers. And that's sort of their job. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll continue rolling. An edge rusher that was on the Chiefs for the last 4 or 5 years, since 2019. It's Frank Clark. He'll now be a Denver Bronco. He was on Undefined podcast with Josina Anderson and weighed in on a number of things that took place this offseason with the Chiefs and how he ended up with the Denver Broncos. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll hear from Frank Clark next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports.
Thank you to Nick Shook, NFL.com, joining us to talk about his series. One of those being the top wide receivers in catch rate over expected. Number 1 being Richie James, and number 2 being George Pickens from the Steelers. That's a fun name to hear about. But yeah, the top 10. It is certainly a surprise that Richie James is on that list. And one of the things we talked about last week is, the oddity of him showing up there and yet not even sort of viewed around here as, well, he's going to be on the squad. Like, we named 4 guys, and those guys are going to be a part of the wide receiver group. And then, boy, it could be a number of Justin Watson could be on the team or could get cut. Richie James could be on the team or could get cut. Justin Ross, John Ross, any other Ross. But Richie James being number 1 there, you wouldn't expect that guy to be like, he may or may not even be on the team, which, 70% expected catch rate would mean that he was open. So is he schemed open? Is he schemed open while also knowing where he needs to be schemed open? Because Dabble and Mike Kafka are pretty good offensively to scheming guys open, and they have to do that with, Daniel Jones. And if he's schemed open, then clearly he knows what he's doing with an offense as to understanding the scheme and where he's supposed to be, so he's getting open. And then he's also catching passes while he may or may not be as open that they are not expected to be caught from Daniel Jones. So that would make him a pretty valuable player, especially if he can also return some punts, which would take the load off of Kadarius Toney, who's going to be viewed as more of a, quote, potential number 1 receiver. So it is quite the surprise of the name there at the top with Richie James, who I liked as the signing, but I know that there's a lot of decisions that have to be made. And when they signed or drafted Rashee Rice, there were 4 guys that were going to be on this squad no matter what, assuming non-injuries. You had 4 guys, and then 6 typically what they would keep. Then they don't keep a fullback, and so now they could go to 7. They can go to an extra offensive lineman. They can do some other things. They can even go, put that extra player on defense and go 26-24. Typically they go 25-25, but they can go 26 defense, 24 offense with the 3 specialty players, punter, kicker, long snapper. But they got different ways they can go with that, and it may be wide receiver to keep Richie James, Justin Watson, and a Ross.
It's just so interesting because, like you mentioned with the quarterback stats earlier, that if you put out a quarterback graphic and Patrick Mahomes is not the first name on the list, the rest of the graphic suddenly becomes really put into question. But when you flip the Richie James CROE God chart up on its head, 2 through 9 make total sense. Like this, it's not necessarily the 9 best receivers in football, but specifically going with that metric, like, you could kind of nod your way along through it. George Pickens and his physicality, and Mike Williams similarly. You mentioned Dallas Goedert. Cooper Kupp is a different type of receiver, but he's always open and making catches he shouldn't be, so it just makes sense. And Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and Devontae Smith and Stephon Diggs and Terry McLaurin, like, those are guys who all belong in those types of conversations, which is why it becomes so interesting and a little bit scary to see Richie James not just on the list, but at the very top of it. I mean, you can do a little bit of sample sizing, but he met the cutoffs that were put into the process to try to get you a reasonable list, not just a bunch of super small sample size kind of one-hit wonder types that Nick knew that was all going to be a part of the kind of honing process through everything there. And yet I can't explain it. I've watched a little bit of Richie James from last year now, when the Chiefs signed him, but I don't have some like instant take as to here's why it's sustainable, which is I guess the part that's kind of making me wonder if that other shoe's going to drop. But if this is even on the right track, the Chiefs would have another weapon that is in this group. Like again, like Nick was talking about, I think Kadarius Toney is the guy right now who you say, hey, there's superstar potential there. Mm-hmm. But if Richie James can bring that multifaceted special teams and offensive productivity, that is a valuable thing to have. And if Richie James can be a valuable addition after being a relatively quiet signing, that would be awesome for this offense and for special teams.
So last year, Daniel Jones, quarterback for the New York Giants, he had a passer rating last year of 92.5. When he was targeting Richie James, he had a passer rating of 120.
Mm-hmm.
That's on, 70 targets. which is not just you target him, a few times, and hey, that's pretty good. But he's 70 targets, and he made 57 receptions on the 70 targets. And when he targeted him 70 times, he had a quarterback rating of 120. He had a quarterback rating of 92 this year, did Daniel Jones. So that's also pretty interesting that even because those yards after catch still count for quarterback rating.
Right.
So he throws to Richie James, 10-yard catch. He turns that into 25. That's a 25-yard completion for Daniel Jones. I mean, that goes on the passer rating for Daniel Jones. So it's just fascinating that his name is there, yet kind of viewed as on the bubble of even making the roster for the Chiefs.
And if it is schematic and about the offense maximizing his skill sets, picked a pretty good spot to try to keep that going with. I mean, that would really fit the bill here in Kansas City.
We will hear from Frank Clark, I promise, on the other side of the break. A few clips from the Josina Anderson Undefined podcast talking about his relationship with the Chiefs, conversation with Brett Veach when he knew his time was over in Kansas City, and what those conversations were like with the Chiefs GM. More Zone next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 WHB Facebook.
913-912-4810, the text line. Earlier in the show, we were talking some Royals. Text comes in, says, Mizzou fan here. Can we talk KU or K-State? I'm done with the Royals until ownership shows anything about that they care. That's great. 913-912-4810. Let's talk some Frank Clark, some Chiefs football, and the Denver Broncos. This is a little bit of a longer clip when he was on with on the Undefined podcast with Josina Anderson, and he weighs in and talks about when he knew his time in Kansas City was over.
The reality is I had to face that a few months ago, when I had the conversation with, my GM, with Veach. I had to, that settled in for me a few months ago, the fact that, it was a high chance that I probably wasn't going to be back. It's always a little bit of hope that you can go defend your crown and stuff like that. But I kind of knew, I knew it probably wasn't going to happen, just based off our conversation that we had. We had a personal conversation, and I felt him after the conversation. But, it's all about the journey at the end of the day. And I love it. You know what I'm saying? I'm enjoying it. You know what I mean? And I'm happy. I'm excited. The Chiefs, it's a first-class organization. First off, it's a first-class organization. Andy Reid, starting all the way at the top, coming down to my coach, my head coach. He's forever going to be, my head coach. And Andy Reid, we had shared countless times, many conversations about cars and about life and about family and about just making the wrong decisions, both decisions he's made and I've made, and making the good decisions. He talked about it all. I'm forever grateful for having him. You know what I mean? I came in a young man coming in, and he turned me into a true man, and helped me become a stand-up guy in this league. So, and in life. So I'm forever thankful for the opportunity that I had to even play for that man, play for that team, the brotherhood, and the guys that you meet. Man, that's special. I was able to meet some dope-ass dudes. You know what I'm saying? All my homies, everybody know my relationship with Chris. That's my dog, forever gonna be my dog. But I met, so many other dudes, who was just so cool, man. My boy Chris Lamons, and I got a lot of dudes who wasn't even starters who I was cool with. My punter, Tommy Guns, my punter, my long snapper. You know what I'm saying? It was them type of people who I built relationships with, for real. You know what I mean? Because them the people who people really don't associate or talk to as much, or you know what I mean? And I built, I pride myself on building relationships with them type of people, the janitors and, the people in the office who just, doing normal shit, people picking up our clothes around the locker room. Them the people who I really miss the most, you know what I'm saying? Real talk.
It's cool from Frank Clark. I've been a fan of Frank Clark. I think I mentioned this last week when the news came out of him signing with the Broncos. I think as time passes, he'll become more and more appreciated and loved in Kansas City because obviously what he did in the postseason. There were times during the regular season when he wasn't doing well and wasn't playing well and was a big cap hit, especially in 21 when he was $27 million against the cap and he was just not playing well at all. And he was the focus of a lot of frustration by Chiefs fans and certainly this show and other analysts because he wasn't doing what you need a defensive end to do when he's taken up $27 million, when he's getting paid against the cap more than your quarterback, who, at that point had an MVP and a Super Bowl underneath his belt and had been to another Super Bowl. But as time passes, I think there'll be more of an appreciation for for Frank Clark. And even that, like hearing those conversations of like, well, who do I miss? I miss like obviously Chris Jones, but I miss like the janitors. I miss the people around the locker room that were just picking up jerseys. I miss Tommy Guns, my punter, long snapper, James Winchester, like the guys that I miss like hanging out with and developed relationships with that weren't just the guys that you would maybe expect Frank Clark to be hanging out with and building a relationship with.
Remember when Manny Ramirez went to Boston and he said, "Oh, you have to hire the guy that sets up the pitching machine in the batting cage. I need him to be in Boston too. You got to hire him." And Red Sox said, "Okay," and they called the guy and he's like, "I'm not leaving Cleveland. My family's here." What? I hardly know Manny. What?
I've had like 5 conversations with him, but he's had a lot more conversations with you. So he said he knew a few months ago that his time in Kansas City was done, which would then predate Chris Jones and his effort to try to get Frank Clark re-signed by the Chiefs. Let's hear from Frank Clark. The next obvious question and follow-up by Josina Anderson is, okay, so you have known for a few months, then what were those conversations like with Brett Veach?
At the end of the day, it's a business, but, I take a pay cut for, years at a time. I think it was 2 years in a row I took a pay cut, which is fine. But going into my third year, I have a pretty great year. I helped my team win another Super Bowl. But then, I have a big pay coming in next year on my deal. I think it's 20+ million, I think. It's high. Obviously, it's high, man, in this era of football, especially in this era at cap, too. We obviously know something has to be worked out. I wasn't asking for out the ballpark number. I wasn't out here asking for 15, 20 million. You know what I mean? I was due like 25. So I told him, he basically just gave me the scoop and just said, we're trying to get something done with the few other guys on the team, and I said, I'm with you. I understand fully. He said, if it comes around in free agency, if we can make something work out, later on, let's stay in contact and we can make something, we can work something out. And I said, all right, I got you. And that was basically the gist of the conversation. Did I get an offer? Was it anything said or anything to that degree? No, was never nothing said, because it was more like him saying like, yo, I don't want to offer you a number that you gonna feel disrespected if I offer you. You know what I mean? But I feel like we both enjoyed the time, which I truthfully, like he said, I truthfully believe that and agree to that. I enjoyed my time in KC. I enjoyed the relationship, like I said, that I built with everybody. There's no hard feelings towards nobody in that building. It was just time to move on, time for new beginnings. I felt like I won 2 Super Bowls there. I did the Pro Bowl thing, I learned I didn't even like doing the Pro Bowl thing, honestly. I was more into winning the Super Bowl. Shout out to my boy Chris Jones. He kind of instilled that in me. He like, yo, F a Pro Bowl. He like, we don't do Pro Bowls, bro. We ain't going to no Pro Bowl 5. We going to the Super Bowl, bro. Ever since he hollered at me when I first got there about that conversation, it was Super Bowl on my mind. So shout out my dog for saying F the Pro Bowl back in 2019. So we enjoyed ourselves, man. We enjoyed our time. And we had a great conversation, like I said, and we kept it real. And he knew, he said, you're going to get out there and you're going to probably find a team that's going to fall in love with you and that already do love you, I'm sure. You're going to be able to figure something out that's going to suit you best. And I feel like I did that with the Denver Broncos, and I'm thankful we was able to get something done.
So interesting stuff there from Frank Clark, that the conversation with Brett Veach, and he knows how it works. And he said, look, I've taken pay cuts the last couple of years. I was due like $25 million, which is a bleep ton of money.
High as bleep.
As high as bleep when it comes to the cap. So I knew something was going to have to happen with that. He knows the deal, obviously. And the conversation with Brett Veach was Brett Veach being upfront and saying, look, we're trying to get stuff done with a few other guys on the team. And he said, I understand that. I understand that they're trying to do that. And Brett Veach said, look, maybe later in the free agency, if you're still around, if things get done, we'll keep in contact. And Frank Clark saying, I'm with you. I totally understand that. And saying that Brett Veach said he never offered him a contract because Veach said he didn't want to offer him a contract that he would feel disrespected. Mm-hmm. Look, this is the money that we have to deal with. I can't even really feel good about offering you this money because it's disrespectful to you, and I don't want you to feel disrespected by us. There's going to be a team out there that's going to fall in love with you that probably does love you already, that's going to take care of you, that's probably going to be the best for you, and it ended up being the Denver Broncos. There's a level of respect, trust, and maybe admiration of just man-to-man between Frank Clark and the Chiefs organization.
Yep.
And that comes through when he talks about what the organization means to him, and then the non-contract negotiations, essentially.
We've heard him talk about his relationship with Andy Reid many times, and that sort of man-to-man aspect has always been really evident. It's really cool, and informative to hear about it happening with Veach also. And I'm not surprised by it that maybe Andy Reid and Brett Veach kind of have some interpersonal similarities with how they have these difficult conversations. But it's kind of wild to look at. There's just so much churn that happens with the roster every year, right? The only guys we've heard leave the Chiefs and have some amount of sour grapes have been running backs, like end of their career running backs, right? Who I imagine got here and then heard some very difficult things that they weren't happy with. And that's mostly Le'Veon Bell. LaShawn McCoy doesn't seem to be thrilled with how that all ended, but he was with Andy Reid for long enough that wasn't new to him. It's just a really good little snapshot of those behind-the-curtain conversations we very rarely get to be a part of.
And it also sounds like he's at peace with how everything went down.
Yeah.
How everything happened, too. You know, like, hey, this is the business, you know. Did my thing there. We won 2 Super Bowls. I did love that last little anecdote about conversation with Chris Jones when he got there in 2019 about, you know, F the Pro Bowl.
F a Pro Bowl.
We're not here for Pro Bowls. We're here for Super Bowls. And then Frank Clark said, I didn't even really enjoy the Pro Bowl because he played in a Pro Bowl when they didn't play in the Super Bowl. So you don't enjoy the Pro Bowl because 2019, no Pro Bowl, they played in the Super Bowl. 2020, no Pro Bowl, they played in the Super Bowl. 2021, Pro Bowl because they did not play in the Super Bowl. 2022, no Pro Bowl because they played in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, it wouldn't be fun to enjoy the one time you actually got to play in a Pro Bowl because it's the one time in your Chiefs' career you didn't play in a Super Bowl. You know, and it's great that, you know, Chris Jones talks to him and says, F a Pro Bowl, we're here for Super Bowls, and 3 of the next 4 years they go to a Super Bowl, and they win 2 of them.
And it also, even going back to the conversation about Tommy Guns and Chris Lamons and the janitors and the
Winchester,
you know, all of that, right? It does also add another dimension to the conversations you hear so often about like Frank Clark locker room guy, right? And other guys that are still here, you know, seem to share that trait as well. But that's something else that you hear a lot that you very rarely see. Like you can see on the sidelines leading the pregame speech, we see that, and that looks like it. But again, some of that interpersonal behind-the-scenes stuff that I think probably really ties the team together and just makes a guy a good dude to have in the locker room. You get a lot of color in those stories that are oftentimes just the outlines.
There's another clip from Chris Jones we'll play a little bit later on, and he was asked by Josina Anderson. Okay, so when I say Chris Jones, sorry, Frank Clark. Makes way more sense if it's Frank Clark that was on the podcast rather than just Chris Jones. But he was asked, like, you know, so you talk about this with the organization, why not take less money again and stay in that organization? So we'll play that clip a little bit later on and see, like, the mindset of where he's at as to why it was like, no, I'm going to head to Denver. But we'll talk with Max Reaper, some Royals next.
Mason Memorial Cowboy Up Triathlon, August 6th at Smithville Lake. If you've ever thought about doing a triathlon, then this is the event for you. It's
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. We'll talk with Mick Schaefer an hour from now, KSHB 41 Sports Director. Right now, let's talk some Royals baseball from Royals Review. Max Reaper joining us here in the zone on this Monday edition. Max, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good, Jason. Thanks for having me on to talk about all the positive things coming from the Kansas City Royals these days.
That's right. So we're going to have you on for about 30 seconds and then let you go. Thank you. It's Chiefs night out at Kauffman. There we go. That's what we'll talk about. And you know what? That towel actually looks pretty cool. So there we go, I guess.
Well, I'm glad they're helping out the Chiefs. Yes. They're having a promotion for that football team across the parking lot. Not sure a lot of people knew about that team. The Royals giving some promo to some unknown guys like Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. It's kind of nice.
That's right. And originally, it's like, you know what? Let's head out there and watch Ellie De La Cruz. Now you've got two reasons: Chiefs night and Ellie De La Cruz to go out there and watch the Royals. So very smart about that. I also wonder if it's coincidental or on purpose that they had Chiefs night against a team from Cincinnati, which I do.
I didn't even think about that.
I do appreciate the salt. I appreciate the salt if that was on purpose. Thank you, Royals. It's one of the few things they've done really well this year, if that's the case. Real quick, some housekeeping. The moves that were made between Northwest Arkansas and Omaha with guys being brought up and things like that, is there a major league connection with some other moves that may be made as Klein and Marsh and Rave have been advanced from AA to AAA? Is there something else that'll happen from AAA to the majors, do you think?
Well, and joining on with that, they just signed two players to minor league contracts. Matt Beatty, who you may remember from spring training, was in camp with the Royals, didn't make the team. They sold him to the Giants for cash considerations. He spent a couple games with the Giants, but was designated for assignment 2 weeks ago, and apparently the Royals have picked him back up. He's going to go to Omaha, and then Jermaine Palacios, who's a reserve infielder, played 30 games with the Twins, can't really hit much, but can give you some versatility in the infield. He also signed and will be heading to Omaha. So now that's 5 players Omaha's added to the roster. They were a little bit under with some injuries, but certainly they don't have room for all of these guys. So you'd have to think there are some moves in the works. I think the one that a lot of people have pointed to is that Dairon Blanco, who's been tearing it up for AAA Omaha, 347 average, 47 steals already this year. I think a lot of people are pointing, okay, he's got to be the one that comes up, and maybe we're kind of done with the Jackie Bradley Jr. experiment. Blanco's not a young guy. He's 30 years old. He came up for a couple games last year. But with that kind of speed, that can be at least some sort of weapon you can use for this major league team. And Bradley, good defender, but it's pretty clear he's at the end of his career, and his bat is washed up. It's been washed up for a couple of years now, and we appreciate his service, but it seems like Blanco could kind of give you that kind of production, if not better, and at least give you a really exciting pinch running option late in games, provides that same kind of defense. So I think we're going to start seeing some moves here. Certainly Omaha has to kind of get down under their roster limit. So I think we're going to see some guys come up here pretty soon. And look, it's time. Samad Taylor would be another name that's hitting really well for AAA Omaha. I'd like to see him up here in a reserve role. I think he's a guy that could also be a nice speed option, but also a guy that can hit a little bit as well. So it was a frustrating road trip, and I think a lot of times after frustrating road trips, you see some moves being made. So we'll have to see this afternoon if the Royals start shuffling the roster a bit.
Do you think the Royals, if they bring up Dairon Blanco, like you mentioned, he's not a top prospect to where you'd bring him up and go, well, you've got to play him. Like you bring up Garcia, he'd better be playing. He's not going to be a reserve player behind Dozier. You bring him up and Dozier's on the roster as a reserve until Nicky Lopez comes back and then you DFA him. You bring up Dairon Blanco, if he was 22, 23, it'd be like you got to play him. But being 30 years old, and you mentioned the steals, and that gives them an exciting pinch run option where they didn't have that with Jackie Bradley Jr., but taking it a step further, is there an option of Dairon Blanco being the center fielder against left-handed pitchers and Drew Waters being the center fielder against right-handed pitchers? His splits, I mean, it's not like he's crushing, right-handed pitching, Drew Waters, but he is batting better from the left side than the right side. Or would it just be to spell somebody in the outfield from time to time, and they like the switch hitting of Drew Waters, and they're not going to take one side away right now this early in his career?
Yeah, I think my instinct is that you'd want to see Waters in there as much as you can, and like you say, kind of you want to expose them to both sides of the plate as much as you can. But, look, Quartararo has been pretty good about mixing and matching and getting guys into the lineup for better or for worse. Jackie Bradley Jr. wasn't just sitting on the bench. He's getting a lot of games, probably more than he probably should have. But they'll find opportunity in outfield. I don't know if you noticed that Edward Olivares has not been very good defensive outfield.
What?
So if they can move him to DH now with Vinny Pasquantino out for a while, and Dairon Blanco's playing left or center, and giving them some a defensive upgrade there. That's going to help out your pitching staff if nothing else. But that's a better defensive option out there that can help you out. So they'll find opportunities for him. Yeah, I agree with what you said. Like he's not so young that he needs to be in the lineup every day. Like I think his upside is nice fourth outfielder that can bring some speed. So this is kind of a nice role for him if he does get the call. And we're kind of jumping to conclusions, but they're kind of telegraphing it here. I think that this would make a lot of sense to have him up here as a fourth outfielder.
And even as him being 30 years old, there's team control for him until 2029. So I mean, it's not like, well, you bring him up and what do you have in him? Well, he's only going to be here for another year. No, I mean, if he can be a good fourth outfielder, fifth outfielders, a speed off the bench, somebody to be a nice player of your 26-man roster. I mean, they've got him for a while, even though he is, he just turned 30, so it's not like he's an older 30. He's not like he's going to turn 31. He just turned 30.
It's not unlike Paulo Orlando. The role
great
he served
comparison,
for a couple years, and he was a nice cross-controlled outfielder who could run, and if nothing else, just kind of brought some energy to the lineup. So I think that's the kind of guy Blanco could be.
No, I like that. Visiting with Max Reaper, Royals Review. So this team is 18-47, and it's odd because I sound hypocritical when I mention the record because like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I'm like, I don't care about the record anymore. This is an evaluation year record, this, that. I mean, it's pretty bad. But as they continue losing and losing and losing, I do bring up how bad the record is. So just in terms of an evaluation year versus this team pacing for 45 wins and 117 losses, you wrote a little bit about it at Royals Review 3 days ago before they got swept by the Orioles. Is this team really as bad as the record indicates, or are there other things going on that it's like, hey, they're unlucky, that it seems like, lipstick on a really, really bad pig?
Well, yeah, I've seen some of those really, really bad those pigs, in the past. I've seen some really bad Royals teams in the past. And 2005, 2006. And this team on paper doesn't seem like it should be that bad, right? I mean, they're kind of just zooming past these teams as far as how bad their record is. So I'm with your opinion from a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to judge this team on wins and losses. I'm right there with you. I don't think necessarily if you lose 100 games, 110 games, that's, what's the difference really, right? You want to see progress. You want to evaluate these players. You want to see these young players take a step forward. That being said, how many of these players are taking a step forward? I mean, how many guys do you feel better about right now than you did 3 months ago? Nick Pratto, I think. He's gotten off to a good start. I kind of like his bat and the way he plays first base. Michael Garcia looks like he's legit so far. Great defender, pretty good bat. And that's about it. Brady Singer's certainly taken a step back. Bobby Witt Jr. hasn't been bad. I think he's been solid, but he certainly hasn't taken a step forward where you say, okay, he's kind of living up to the star potential people have talked about him with. Like, he's looking like a nice starter on a solid team that hits like fifth or sixth and, gives you some speed, but certainly not a guy that's going to carry a lineup. Vinny Pasquantino, I believe in his bat, but he's been slumping the last month. I don't think I feel better about him than I did a couple months ago, but I feel he's been okay. And then MJ Melendez, I thought would take a bigger step forward than he has. And a lot of the other guys are pretty incomplete. Edward Olivares, he's been inconsistent at the plate and certainly hasn't played well defensively. Drew Waters has been hurt. We haven't gotten to see him that much. Kyle Isbell's been hurt. Chris Bubich and Daniel Lynch have been hurt. So, in terms of an evaluation year, we haven't really gotten to evaluate some of these guys. And the ones we have really been getting by with a C grade or a B, B minus maybe. So it's that's what's been most disappointing to me. It's like if they lose games, fine. The Diamondbacks a couple years ago lost 111 games. It was a disaster season, but you know what? They're the best team in the National League West right now with a lot of young players. And as long as there's a path forward and you see a light at the end of the tunnel and you see a process, that's great. The Orioles, who just swept us. I mean, they were god awful for 3 or 4 years, but there was a process in place, and they were getting better, and their young players were making progress. I don't know if I see that with the Royals right now, and it's going to be a hard evaluation at the end of the year, not just with the players, but with the front office as well. Like, where are we right now? Are we at the beginning of a rebuild or at the end of a rebuild? And we need to start spending money and supplementing this roster with major league talent. And that's going to be a hard choice because I don't know what the right answer is at this point. I mean, there's just so many question marks in the organization, from the major league team to the minor leagues, that I don't envy the kind of choices they're going to have to make this offseason because there doesn't seem to be a clear path going forward.
The Max Reaper's our guest from Royals Review. You mentioned the Orioles, and I brought them up last week as a basis of comparison for where this Royals organization is compared to where the Orioles are. As you know, they are 17 games over 500, going 5-1 against the Royals this year. They are in second place in their division, in the best division in baseball. And the Royals won the World Series in 2015. They beat the Orioles in 2014 to go to the World Series. But the Orioles made the playoffs in 2016. So it wasn't like the Orioles in 2014 and then they started sucking. They finished 500 in 2015, made the playoffs in 2016, and then they went into sort of a year where they started slumping and then rebuild mode. They've been bad, but their success trajectory arc has been pretty similar to the Royals, and yet this is a team playing baseball the way that they are, finished 4 games above 500 last year. They've graduated a number of their prospects to the big leagues, and they have 8 in the top 100 updated at Baseball America midseason, 8 players in the top 100, and the Royals had their only one preseason dropout in Gavin Cross. That can be the slap in the face and the cold splash of water of, hey, they got these top draft picks and, they've been losing and collecting some prospects and they're going to come along. And, yeah, they graduated some guys, so it's really tough to really see what the farm system is. And it's like, yeah, the Orioles graduated guys too. And they've got 8 more ready to go in the top 100. That's incredibly discouraging.
Yeah, you get so envious looking at their farm system, just how loaded it is. The Royals have been there before. 2011, they had that top farm system, but it's it's a far cry from that now. Mm-hmm. And I think what's really interesting with the Orioles is, like you kind of mentioned, is like they've gotten good before this wave of prospects has come up, and that's kind of the way you need to do it. You don't want these prospects coming up, and it's like, well, this team stinks. You guys, it's kind of on you guys to bring us out of this doldrum and get us back to contention. That's a lot of pressure for a lot of these guys. The Orioles, they've had a couple guys trickle up. Adley Rutschman, obviously, has made a huge impact on that club. But they've found ways to get improved performance out of a lot of guys. Like Jorge Mateo was a guy they picked up off waivers to play shortstop from the A's, and he got off to a great start with the bat. He slumped a little bit since then, but he's played amazing defense and has really been a huge positive for them. Their entire bullpen is all guys claimed off waivers, Rule 5 draft pick, minor trade, guys you've never heard of that didn't make any waves when they signed them, but they found a way to develop these guys into fantastic relievers. Felix Bautista was a guy that bounced around from team to team in the minors. Suddenly he's one of the best closers in baseball. Yenier Cano was a guy they got in the trade for Jorge Lopez. It was kind of a throw-in. People are like, why are you picking up this 28-year-old sinker baller? And suddenly he's the best reliever in baseball. And that's, the Royals kind of used to be pretty good at that. They used to be fine, relievers and could make a lot of hay out of a guy that didn't look like on paper like he should be a solid reliever. Wade Davis was ordained that he was going to be a great closer. Ryan Madsen was a guy that was sitting at home when they made him a really solid reliever. Mm-hmm. But somehow the Orioles have found a way to develop these guys, and I think the Orioles have lost that. I think they're counting too much on their development, and their development process isn't turning out the players it used to. It's not making these players better. And there's something that the Rays and the Orioles and some of the smart teams in baseball are doing, where they're able to look at the data, they're able to implement it, integrate it with their coaching staff, and figure out a way to get these players to improve. I just don't see that enough with the Orioles. That's been probably the most frustrating thing. It's not like the Orioles are spending lots of money to improve. They're just developing players better at this point, and they're just so good at it that they're able to take guys off the street basically and get some really solid performance out of them. So, what a clear contrast with this last series with an organization that's kind of doing it the right way. And you look at the Reds. You mentioned Elly De La Cruz and the Reds coming into town this week. I mean, they're another team that was good, lost 100 games last year, didn't make any moves, and suddenly they're back in contention, kind of closer to 500 with an exciting young team of hitters. So, it can be done, but the Royals just aren't really on that path where they're kind of catching up with some of these other smaller market teams that are just good at development.
Well, and also you got to get a little bit lucky, and only if they would be able to, have a really small sort of trade that was kind of for cash before the season, and get a guy like lucky with a guy like Ryan O'Hearn. And if the Royals could do something like that, that'd be great. But where do you find the Ryan O'Hearns of the world that is OPSing at 990 and batting 330 and getting on base at almost 400? In 24 games and 71 plate appearances? Those guys don't just grow on trees, and the Royals just don't get lucky enough to find players like that.
Yeah, look, and good for Ryan O'Hearn. I mean, I'm glad he's having success.
Me too, yeah.
And it's not like, look, we were, of course, as a fan, we were the ones calling on him to, be shuttled out of town at the first instance, from the beginning of the season. But so I don't blame the Royals for letting him go. I guess what comes to my mind is like, why are players leaving Kansas City? And Emmanuel Rivera for the Diamondbacks, another guy who I wasn't really that high on. He was, seemed like just a guy, but he's going to Arizona. He's hitting like 353 in 30 games. We'll see how sustainable that is. Why are guys leaving the organization, going to other teams, and having success? And maybe it's not sustainable success. Maybe they'll have a bad second half, but they're having some success. And it just again, it's a little bit of an indictment of their coaching and development that we can't find a couple of those, diamonds in the rough in Kansas City and find a player that can help us like that. So that's what's most frustrating to me. Not that Ryan O'Hearn so much was the guy that was the one that got away. Just that why aren't we finding a Ryan O'Hearn of our own from some other organization?
Yeah, Emmanuel Rivera had 309 plate appearances with the Royals and got on base at 294 with an OPS of 670. In 258 plate appearances, so almost the same amount with Arizona. He's getting on base at 340 with a almost 790 OPS. So yeah, you're seeing a couple of those guys go somewhere else and play well. Visiting with Max Reaper, Royals Review. It's been brought up, over the last couple of weeks or so, as we are about 6 weeks away from the trade deadline, and maybe even closer than that to the Royals maybe making a move or two. Salvi has been mentioned. Where do you land on the prospective trade or Salvador Perez being involved in conversations this summer on moving the longtime Royals catcher?
Yeah, I read the Ken Rosenthal piece, and I don't see. And it seemed like it was speculation from another executive that Salvi would be included in a trade. I just can't see. I think there's like a less than 1% chance that Salvador Perez will be traded. Number one, it's hard to trade catchers in the middle of the season. It can be done. I think, Christian Vasquez was traded last year to the Astros, and I think it sounded like they wanted Wilson Contreras and had a deal for him, but it was kind of nixed at the last minute. So those kind of catchers can get traded, but it's a little harder. You need to find a contender that has an opening there, and usually when you're contending, your catcher's playing pretty well. So, it definitely can happen. But and then of course he has to agree to any trade as a 10-5 veteran. And I think the big thing is they're trying to get a new stadium. That's going to be a factor. The reputations are not good in Kansas City right now, and because they're so bad. And you trade away the face of the franchise, the player that's making the most money. Certainly feeds into the narrative that you're a cheap owner who doesn't care about the team at all and doesn't care about the fan base. And then you're going to ask for the taxpayers for $1 billion district or $2 billion ballpark district. That's not going to fly. So, that kind of stuff shouldn't matter, but it almost certainly will. I don't think he's going to be good. I mean, to this point, and look, you're.
Max Reaper Royals Review is our guest. Max, you're breaking up there a little bit with us. So that was really the last question I had for Max anyway. So instead of reconnecting or anything, we'll just let him go. And if he were, to be able to hear this, Max, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. Awesome stuff. Royals Review, go check that out. He's also got a piece there with the newer Royals that he mentioned that signed to minor league deals with the different minor league moves that were made today, that the expectation is there will be then a big league move that would be made. But even weighing in on Salvi there of, this is the issue that the Royals run into. It may be the best interest of the ball club to trade Salvador Perez. Is it the best interest of the ownership group? We're trying to get a new ballpark downtown to trade Salvador Perez. And the best interest of the ball club should be the main thing. If you feel like you become a better team by trading Salvi, then you should be doing that. Because we get a lot into the frustrations of Dayton Moore that people had of being too loyal to players and having the jersey. And, well, if this guy or a kid or, girl is a fan of Salvi and they go out to the ballpark and he's not there, well, then they're not going to show up. Well, this is going to come as a shock to the Royals, but, they're not showing up right now. And they're not able to watch you on TV either. So that ain't exactly bringing people to the ballpark. But to me, it would be hustling backwards to say you can't trade Salvi, even though it would make the team better, because we want to get a downtown baseball stadium where the best way to do that is to have a better team, not just have the PR of a better team. Because keep Salvi all you want, but if your team sucks, it ain't going to help you get a ballpark. You get to 500 if you trade Salvi, and all of a sudden you're 81-81, and the projection is that you're going to be better. Much easier to go to the taxpayers and say, look, we spent some money this offseason. We're doing this. We're going to do some things over there. We are investing in the club. Yes, we traded Salvi, but we would have traded Salvi even if all this other, because it was the best interest of the club and it worked out, all that stuff. But I would say from the ownership group to J.J. Piccolo, if you're going to trade Salvi, you damn sure better get it right. You cannot miss. You cannot have somebody who would just be toiling in the minor leagues, or a couple of guys toiling in the minor leagues, or come up to the big leagues and can't get it done. And that's who you traded Salvi for, because that would be the disaster. Process versus execution. Process for the Chiefs and Tyreek Hill, totally agreed with. The execution also backed that up. Process of trading Salvi, I'm on board with. Execution, I don't know that I trust the Royals organization to get that done. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next.
You're in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 W.
913-912-4810. Text says, I do appreciate Max. Just sad times to be a Royals fan. As in, like, look, I don't want you guys to talk Royals. I appreciate Max, but, oh, man, it sucks. 913-912-4810. Text says, I really would have liked to keep O'Hearn because I knew he was capable of this, especially with the shift band. If you're going to trade Salvi, then why on earth are you having MJ Melendez waste time in right field? I don't care if it hurts or helps the ball club. I don't want to trade if it's potential future Hall of Famer off the team if we kept him this long. I mean, I think there are a lot of people that would echo those sentiments of, well, Salvi's been around this long, so are you now going to trade him if maybe he's got 3, 4, 5 years left? Then, keep him on the Royals. And also, if MJ Melendez, if you're going to trade Salvi, why is MJ playing right field? And I think MJ's playing right field because the Royals essentially decided he's not going to play catcher.
Yeah.
It's not that, hey, we would have kept him at backup catcher if we knew we were going to trade Salvi. I think they knew, Salvi or not, this ain't the answer. This guy isn't the answer. So it might be Fermin until they figure out the answer. But MJ ain't it. So let's see if this year, in an evaluation year, he can play right field. And if he can't, then we got to figure out what to do with MJ Melendez. Do we move him? Do we make him a DH on a team that has a lot of DHs, with Vinny Pasquantino out? Well, if you bring up Dyron Blanco, then he could play some left field, or Drew Waters can play some left field, and Blanco can play center field with Nick Pratto then playing first base, and you could have a DH actually playing DH in Edward Olivares. You could also have a DH and MJ Melendez playing, DH. So, I don't know. I think they decided that this guy is not going to be the catcher of the future. So where's the best bet for him? Probably in right field. So Fermin's looked good while he's been up with the club. It'd be nice if some of the lower level catchers would age quicker. Can they be Benjamin Button went the other way, right?
Yeah, he went, I think that's right.
So is it Robin Williams when he aged very quickly, like he was like a third grader, but he looked like he was 25?
Yeah, Jack. This is from Jack.
Yeah, that's Jack. So we need like one of these.
We need the Royals farm system to get Jack disease, basically.
Get jacked up.
Not a reference I thought we'd have to have ready to go today, but God, I love where we land sometimes.
Yes,
unbelievable. We've got not Benjamin Button. We do need Jack.
Yes, and you know what? It'd be great if Salvi turned into Benjamin Button. And he could
that's perfect.
Get younger and younger and younger.
Age Salvi down, age up one of those catchers in the minors. I think that's a good idea.
Yes.
I'm glad you guys mentioned Ryan O'Hearn also for certified Royals killer, Ryan O'Hearn. And I think that there's a lot of good goofs and gags we could have around all of that because it's flatly hilarious. Anyone who doesn't think it's funny, gotta get a different hobby, I guess. It's perfect comedy. But it also made me think a little bit about some of the conversations we started having around Jake Junis last year. And it's a different game because the pitching staff and the pitching coaching staff is dramatically different now. And it was he got away from Cal Eldred and look what happened. But and I'm not saying that, let's say, Jorge Soler and Ryan O'Hearn are the two examples that sink this particular ship. But if you keep seeing guys leave Kansas City and get better, it's just, it's another red flag. We are just absolutely swimming in them at that point. And again, I think a great game from Ryan O'Hearn is not the time to say, oh man, they can't even develop hitters. All this talk about the new hitting development, put it right in the toity. I don't think that's a reasonable path to take, but it does start making my eye twitch a little bit. It's one of those things where you say, okay, well, maybe we can't trust the scouting, and maybe we can't trust the development, and the players aren't very good, and oh God, we have to at least find the fault line here. And you just hope there's only one or two of them and not 3 or 4.
Yeah, the Royals offense has gone in the tank again.
Yeah.
And the issue with, feeling like, okay, this Alex Zumwalt and the newer hitting coaches and this approach is working. The issue you run into is that the walk rate has been bad this year. The strikeout rate has been bad this year. They swing and miss at a lot of pitches. Not just that they're flailing, they're swinging and missing at pitches in the zone. Again, their walk rate is 25th in baseball. Their strikeout rate is 21st in baseball.
Ryan O'Hearn has more RBI this year than he did in twice as many plate appearances with the Royals last year.
The Royals have the 4th highest swing rate in baseball, and they are 27th in contact rate.
That seems like a bad combo, Jason. I'm no mathematician, but...
And in
Can
June...
you say that one again, actually? That one does just... It sounds like the worst somehow.
The Royals rank 4th highest in swing rate.
Aggressive. Great, yeah.
Yes. While ranking 27th in contact rate.
Oh.
That's a bad combination.
I'm guessing they're really high in swing and miss rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you would be punctilious in assuming the Royals in June have a 2% walk rate, walking at roughly 2% of the time. So other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, it's been a phenomenal year for this Royals organization. 913-912-4810 is the text line. We'll talk with Mick Schaefer, and we won't talk much baseball anymore. Text says, how about Emmanuel Rivera in Arizona? Yeah, that's... That is one of the things that Max Reaper brought up. And the connection there, which is great, says, and I forgot about this, says, how about Emmanuel Rivera in Arizona while we got 2 months of Luke Weaver in that trade, who's starting tonight against Kansas City?
Awesome.
For the Reds is Luke Weaver.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I had mentioned those numbers with Max Reaper about Emmanuel Rivera. Emmanuel Reaper and Max Rivera. But no, Emmanuel Rivera with the Arizona Diamondbacks in almost the same amount of plate appearances. He's OPSing at 150 points higher, and he's getting on base at like 350 when he got on base with the Royals at 294. Almost the same amount of plate appearances. Going somewhere else and improving. Ryan O'Hearn going somewhere else and improving. And maybe it's just winning baseball around him. Maybe it's just being a part of a winning team and finding ways to come through. So, Texas haven't looked at O'Hearn power numbers. How much has the short porch in Baltimore played a role in its success? I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked all that close either, but, I mean, it's not just about, hitting home runs. I mean, he
has 4 homers this year. Again, that's just specifically. I don't even know if that's home run. But
yeah, I mean, he could. Right, that's a good question about, 1, the spray chart, 2, home road splits, but also, hitting doubles, just getting on base in a batting average. Whether it's home runs in Baltimore or not, it's, a batting average is 330. I mean,
he's hitting 462 in Baltimore right now. That's only 9 of those games, 31 plate appearances, but
it's pretty good.
He also is walking more in at home. So
how many home runs does he have in Baltimore?
2 at home, 2 on the road.
See, there you go.
RBI splits are pretty much the same, but more hits and scoring more at home.
Text at 913-912-4810 says, maybe it's just the Royals suck at talent evaluation. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here, guys. Let's calm down here, okay? What are the odds of that? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, it have to just be at every level, right? Like this is the darkness seeping in. This is where this just starts to degrade into the ramblings of madmen. But it's just like, well, maybe Dayton Moore was personally tanking, and then everything will get better without just him now.
I don't care what anybody says. I think Lonnie Goldberg has killed the draft.
Killed my interest in it.
And by killed, I mean murdered it.
Yeah. But is it his fault? I don't know. Well, we'll find out in like 2 years. 2 or 3 years from now, we're going to know whose fault this Royals team is.
Well, the Royals don't think it's his fault. He got promoted.
Maybe 4 or 5 years.
You've done such a great job of this Royals organization and picking high and not having a whole lot of prospect to show for it.
But like, it would be a crazy thing to like fire JJ and Goldberg right now, right?
Yeah, of course.
Or Matt Couture, even at the end of the year. That's, and I'm not
Right.
saying that you're saying that they should just clean house now, but like they did like a soft reboot. Like they recasted the main character in the organization and a couple other bit roles, and then just kind of moved everybody else into the spotlight, in which is fine. That's a fine strategy if you believe in there being a new philosophy coming from JJ and Cutrero and really doing some things differently and all of that. But it does not necessarily reinvigorate your faith in the franchise. Like they, killed off Captain America or whatever, and now we're on to a slightly different version of the Avengers that are still succeeding at a rate significantly lower than actual superheroes.
Yeah, a story as old as time. New GM is hired, and the players from the old regime are sucking.
Right.
And the new GM is going to take some time to rebuild some certain things that then you don't just cash everybody and fire them. The issue is JJ Picollo is, while a new regime, is connected very deeply to the previous regime, even though I believe the things that he does are going to be different.
Yeah.
I don't believe him to be the same as Dayton Moore, but it's tough to give him the time when it's like, yeah, but he's taken over for Dayton Moore, and these are Dayton's players, and didn't he have some sort of a role in being a part of building this team? It's absolutely fair criticism, but it's also a new regime, new GM, that this thing sucks.
Yeah.
Texas, good thing we got through that tough part of the schedule. This is where it gets easy. That's right. That's right. They went against the A's, White Sox, Nationals, Cardinals, and Rockies. They went 7-11. They are 11-36 against everyone else.
And we even talk about progression in the super micro sense, right? Because record progression's not much. David Lesky pointed this out in his newsletter that came out this morning. Since winning their last series, the Royals are now 4-16.
Oh.
They started this season 4-16. Like, it's just I really feel like we give it the old college try. If there is a pleasant silver lining that swoops by, we will slice our hand open trying to grab it. Hey, Nick Pratto! And it's just it's hard to see that it doesn't feel like progress, which again, however many 60, 70 games into a baseball season is not a good time to judge a multi-year rebuild, but we all have to sit here and experience it while it's happening, and it's not been very fun.
As we take a time out, the silver lining is that at the end of the season, you can make a case no matter what that it's progress. And here's why. Either it's progress where you're like, hey, these guys step forward and you know what you have, or it's progress as in like, these guys suck, you know what you have, now move on to the next page because it's not working, and don't waste another year thinking these are the guys that could be the answer.
Right.
So it's at least progress in that it's quicker to getting to where you want to go because this group ain't it.
But if everything right now just projects pretty much exactly to the end of the year, nothing crazy happens positively or negatively, nothing worse. What is that? I mean, is that giving you just those lessons on all the players, or can you make assumptions or decisions on the rest of the front office after 1 year? You probably need to give them a couple off seasons to really know where they stand. So we're just out on, Nicky Lopez or whatever, like to pick a random dude who's just been here for a minute. I don't.
Yeah.
It feels aimless, and it simply cannot feel that way within the Royals front office. I'm sure it doesn't, but it's hard to see that translate right now.
Tex says, "Hey, you said no more baseball."
Sorry.
We'll live up to that. We'll take a timeout. We'll hear that other clip from Frank Clark.
Yeah.
He was asked all of the love for the organization and everything that you said. Why not then take less another year to stay in Kansas City? We'll hear Frank Clark answer that question next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810
912-4810. We got Learn Funniest Best coming up in the next hour as well. NBA Finals game number 5 coming up tonight. We played a couple of clips from Frank Clark, who was on the Undefined podcast with Josina Anderson, and he talked about when he knew his time in Kansas City was over. We played that clip. He talked about the conversation that he had and what that was like with Brett Veach, and played that clip, and it was really fascinating stuff. And go check that out on the podcast. We can play it again with Mick Schaefer, but those clips that were there, and his respect for the organization and sort of understanding the business part of it, and the non-conversation that he had with Brett Veach about a contract, because Brett Veach essentially said, I don't want to offer you a contract that you'd feel disrespected by. And Frank Clark saying that, understand that, appreciate that, love the Chiefs, did some awesome things, and the relationships that were there, but, sort of this is the business of the whole thing. So he had discussed taking a pay cut, the previous couple of years. So then the next question, which the clip will play here, is, okay, so if you did that, you took pay cuts the last couple of years, and you love the organization and Brett Veach and Andy Reid and all the things that they did and you did, and you want to, return as a Super Bowl champion, why not then take less again to stay in Kansas City?
The real part is people understanding that ain't nobody about to sit down and, take pay cut after pay cut after pay cut. And then I don't know what the deal was, because one was never offered. At the end of the day, I'm not about to do nothing that's going to, essentially, that could possibly hurt me, or that can possibly, put me in a bad situation. You know what I'm saying? When you're not talking about money that can be guaranteed, or money that could essentially, that I know that can secure myself. I don't complain about nothing. You know what I'm saying? That's why when it came to this deal and when it came to the situation with everything, I was all solid on it. I love my boys forever in KC. Like, they forever family. I'm forever indebted to them and tied to them. You know what I'm saying? We made history twice together. So at the end of the day, I'm going to wake up and think about the things that I did in KC forever.
There's Frank Clark, and, I've really enjoyed the answers and the conversation that he had on the podcast that I think was released on like Friday or Saturday, whatever it was, in all of the contract discussion, because it's an incredibly real and mature and realistic way of understanding the business of the NFL. In Andy Reid will always be my coach, one of the things that he said. Chiefs are a first-class organization. I had great relationships with the people there. That's what I'll miss the most. He was told that Brett Veach, had said, look, we're trying to get some things done with other guys right now at the beginning of free agency. The money's not there. But as free agency goes along, if these things get done, stay in contact, there is still a chance of you coming back. Even though he kind of knew at that time it was done. But as we said, Brett Veach saying, I'm not going to offer you a contract because you'd feel disrespected by the number that we would have free for you. There's going to be a team that loves you, falls in love with you, already does, and it's going to work out. And that's what happened with the Denver Broncos. But then even that answer there about, well, why not take less again? And it's like, well, there comes a time when it's like, I took less. I've got an opportunity over here to go get $5 million instead of $1 million, and, I'm going to do that. And these 4 years have been nothing but amazing, and for the rest of my life, I'm going to wake up remembering what we did in Kansas City.
And it's interesting, I hadn't considered this until hearing that audio, but when he says, I don't want to do something that could potentially hurt me, if, I don't know that this is how it goes, but I think this stands to reason. If he goes to Brett Veach and says, hey, man, come on, like, 1.5, and I can do this for you. Well, now all of a sudden the Broncos are thinking he was going to go back on a pay cut to the Chiefs for 1.5. We could probably get him for 2.5. You think?
Why are we paying him 5.5?
And now exactly now you actually have lost some leverage there, because the whole like respect in negotiation thing I think carries some water, certainly, but it's also like, yeah, okay, but like if you just said, hey, we'll offer you the vet minimum just so you always got a spot here, right? Well, all of a sudden now Frank Clark's agent has one offer on the table, and it's for the vet minimum. who is going to hit that, what was it, close to 5.5 guaranteed in the deal that he's getting now with Denver. I do think there's something to be said, not for just like a hometown discount. I think that's overused, but the idea of staying in a position where you know you're good, right? Like to stay with a winning team and you know the environment and you love your coaches and all of that. If we're talking about a $500,000 difference, something that could be rounded out depending on where you're paying taxes or whatever, I think you can have that conversation really reasonably. When you're talking about maybe your last multi-million-dollar deal at the NFL level, certainly you'd expect your last one that could make you more than $5 million in a year. Yeah, you probably shouldn't screw around with the money at that point. He's made plenty to this point, I know, but I know that was just another element of it in terms of it's respect and the practicality kind of all coming together. Like you talked about earlier, it just seems like he and the Chiefs have a really healthy, really grown-up mentality about all of this, which has just made it really interesting and kind of nice. Takes a little bit of the sting out of some of the Frank Clark Denver Broncos plays we're going to have to see.
And maybe winning Super Bowls helps heal everything, but there seems to be as good of a relationship in a splitting and going separate ways as maybe I can remember in Kansas City with Frank Clark, that the organization's like, look, we love what Frank Clark brought. And Chris Jones, like, that's my dude. That's, Sack Nation. And Frank Clark, who wasn't even offered a contract by the Chiefs this offseason, that's a first-class organization. Andy Reid took me from being a young man, I think he said, to a true man. And we had so many conversations just about life. And he will always be my coach. Pete Carroll was his coach, and Sean Payton's about to be his coach. But for 4 years, Andy Reid was, and that resulted in that guy will always be my coach, Andy Reid. And the people there in that organization, and I'll remember what the great things were and the winning Super Bowls and all of that, and the respect that's there from Brett Veach and the Chiefs. Like I don't know how often you get a split from somebody that was making that much money and then you just simply cut them and move on. And at times the fans were incredibly frustrated with him, and yet his love of Kansas City and what will be a growing love from fans to Frank Clark, I don't remember a split that seems to be as universally respected from each side of this is just the business and it's just simply time. And man, how much fun were the 4 years that we had. Let's sit back and reminisce. And there was another clip, and I didn't cut it because it was a very small part when he talked about getting emotional with Chris Jones at the White House. That sort of just sitting down and sort of like emotions overwhelming him that, this is over. These 4 years, it's over. Just it had run its course.
I was trying to come up with a good other nominee, but even with guys like Tamba Hali or Jamal Charles, who also, of course, went to Denver, Tamba never played anywhere else. Both sides were not there for it because they hadn't had that success. They hadn't had all that much time together, even with Andy Reid crossing over for those guys for a while. Alex Smith might have a little bit of that, but they never had the trophies to show for it. So I really do think that Frank Clark's relationship with Andy Reid, Brett Veach, and the Chiefs probably stands alone.
Yeah. So cool stuff to hear. Really interesting stuff from Frank Clark. We will talk with Mick Schaefer, KSHB 41 sports director, joining us in the next hour. We got Learn Funniest Best, what had happened from the weekend, what we learned, the funniest from the weekend, the best from the weekend. All that's still to come next.
Firework Mania Superstore opens June 27th with a huge selection.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Final hour of the Monday show coming up tonight, 6:30 NBA Finals pregame, 7:30 Game 5. Heat heading to the Nuggets. 3-1 series lead for Denver, and get-in price roughly $1,100 at Tickets for Less if you would like to go to that Nuggets and Heat game. Shane, is he on his way there? I mean, come on. Pull some strings there, Shane. You know, I run traffic. I can put your spots at the premier position if you can just throw me a little bone here. That's, you want to talk about maximizing what you're already investing. I just need a single, just somewhere in the building, and I will take care of you. A little pat on the back, a little tit for tat. What do you think, huh? What do you think he did that, or Shane was like, oh, I can't go? Nope.
Someone's got to step in and protect Shane's Nuggets.
It's bath night. Can't get there.
My brother lives in Denver. I hadn't thought about that. It could be a wild night.
Could be a wild night. That's right.
Mile High City.
You know what? I think if he could commit to filming and documenting the whole thing, I think we could get a GoFundMe going for at least Shane's ticket. Maybe we got to hop on a plane quick, Shane. But I think that the content of just your brother taking Shane around town, potentially after the Nugs win an NBA final, that I'd be willing to pay some money to that fund.
Would Shane like party and celebrate and all that stuff?
I think he has to as a requirement of the contract that I'm signing him to.
Well, he probably should have bought the tickets this morning because they've gone up $100. Now they're $1,200.
You just wait till like 5 minutes before tip-off.
Yeah,
they'll be
knows
down
exactly.
to
It'd be
doable
free.
$400.
It'd be free. Just walk in, like, all right, you can have the ticket.
Yes,
Fine.
we just want butts and seats.
Go enjoy. You flew all the way here from you know what? Get in there. Get in there. I don't even need the $1,000. Just go enjoy yourself. You're a Nuggets fan in KC. Oh, that's cool, man. Go ahead and do that. Do your thing, dude. You think they close out tonight?
I do.
I do too.
I've picked against the Heat every game this postseason. so it's got to work at some point.
It's worked out well in the 3 or 4 games so far in this series.
What is it now? The Heat have lost 6 of their last 8 playoff games, yet are still alive to win a championship.
Wow, that's crazy.
They've lost 6 of their last 8. Maybe that. There's a lot of games. There's a lot of contests in the NBA playoffs.
That's amazing.
But they've lost 6 of their last 8.
2 and 6.
There's still a chance to win it all.
Tyler Hero's going to try to play tonight, so Nugs in 5. Lock it up.
So it's the last chance he can try to play tonight.
Yes.
I mean, it's like, McCole Hardman tried to play against the Bengals because if they lost that game, his season was over anyway. So might as well come out and try to play. And he did. And he got injured. And he still came out and gave it the old college try. Not saying that Tyler Hero is going to re-injure himself, but
he's going to make one big shot. He's going to go down, and he's going to be
have another rap song
next year, probably.
Well, that's what the big controversy was, is when the Heat were playing the Celtics, that Jack Harlow was wearing a Boston Celtics jacket in the front row when he's got a song called Tyler Hero.
It's in the music video and everything.
And they acted together in the remake of White Men Can't Jump.
Have you seen that?
in there. Yes.
How was it?
I saw it.
How was it?
Yeah, I watched it.
And probably about 2 hours long?
2 hours. They had people in it. And they said some words.
Yeah.
It was 2 hours later than when I started it.
I will say
Some
this:
basketball?
the basketball was better in this version of White Men Can't Jump. Everything else was worse.
Okay, that seems reasonable.
Including the acting.
So they took,
especially the acting.
So the original took actors and taught them basketball. This one took basketball, tried to teach them acting.
I think they're both actors. Well, I mean, whatever Jack Harlow is. Musician, actor,
apparently
guy.
entertainer now.
Entertainer, I guess.
Influencer.
Actors should be down on that list after watching.
Celtics
I think the
fan.
other guy is a real actor. But even like the was it Kadeem Hardison? Is that his? He kind of played the sidekick in the first one. They have 2 guys basically playing his character, and they're not good actors. It's not.
That's too bad.
Is that something you'd like to avoid in a feature film?
Who plays
bad actors?
Who plays Rosie Perez in this one?
I don't know her name, but she's not that type of character. She's not this crazy.
She doesn't go on Jeopardy?
Doesn't go on Jeopardy. She's actually the Rock. She's actually the one that's is grounded and everything and trying to get I can't remember the Jack Harlow's character's name, trying to get him from getting rid of this NBA basketball dream, this professional dream, and get into like real world.
Like rap?
Yeah.
You should do hip hop. You're never going to look. White men can't jump, but they can rap.
They can totally rap, though.
We know that. Okay, look at Eminem and
And yourself?
And Bubba Sparks.
101 minutes. They don't even take a full 2 hours from you.
That was nice of them.
Yeah.
It's like
it's good of them.
Was the food good? Well, I'm not as hungry as I was before. How was the movie? Well, it was 2 hours later than when I started it, so it got me through whatever time I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
We have a currently, I'm turning my screen away so you guys can play this game.
Oh, great.
We have a currently on hiatus sports or leisure category called the Rotten Tomatoes game, where I'll give you the movie and you got to try to guess the percentage. You get a little wiggle room either way. You want
Tell
to play
me about Rotten Tomatoes. Is that just basically what the viewers thought, how they liked it?
You've got audience score and the tomato meter, which is aggregating actual like reviewers and some sort
Thermometer?
of publication. What?
I always thought it was the thermometer.
Yeah,
I
that
think I
sounds-
like thermometer
Thermometer sounds better.
better,
It's
but
like
I've never thought of it that way.
It's like, is it biopic or biopic?
Yeah, like that one I still go back and forth
Is
on.
it photographer or photographer?
Tomater. Say it again, Drake?
Tomatomer.
Thermometer.
Thermometer.
Thermometer, but with a
You say
tomato.
tomatomer, I
say
say tomatomer.
Wow. Okay, this has opened up a whole new level of Rotten Tomatoes for me. You want to take a guess at the critic review score though? This is so again the average score from.
And so 100% is the greatest movie, right?
100% I actually think means that every critic was like, "Hey, this is good and fresh." So you need some.
Give me another movie
I was just looking
that
for.
has a similar score to it.
I'm gonna just give you something in theaters here.
I'm gonna go 31.
Yeah, I was going to say
31%.
27% was the number that popped into my mind. I went Larry Johnson.
Let me see your screen, Jason.
Oh, that's tickets for
I went-
less.
I went Priest Holmes.
It's tickets for less. The $1,300 now for the get-in price.
27%
Wow.
of the critics
Wow.
say
Well
this movie is
done.
good.
You haven't even seen it.
No, that's not. Really? It's 27%?
27. The
That's awesome.
audience score. Anybody want to take a jab? Drake, you can guess.
Oh,
and say
I'm going to say like 62% for the audience score.
All right, so I got a reflection in my screen or something. What's the bit here?
Shut up. 62.
What's happening?
It's 27-62. Did I pull my? You couldn't see my screen,
I
right?
promise you.
You're not reading this off. This would be a crazy time for you to use the superpower of always being able to see my
62%
screen.
was really high.
Yeah.
You could have owned Fact or Fiction with this trick for years. Is my screen
I'm going to go ahead
glass?
and,
My
I'm gonna
laptop?
Go ahead and play the lottery tonight.
That's unfathomable, Jason.
Do it.
Yes.
Try it again. Try some other little
try another movie.
statistic.
Different movie.
Little deal.
Try another movie that's out right now. Let's go.
Fast 10.
Do I want to go critics or am I going to go?
Let's go critics first.
Critics, I'm going to go. Gosh, that's a difficult one. I'm going to go the critics are.
We got to watch Drake here, Mick. I need some eyes in the back of my head.
71%.
It was all luck. He sucks.
56%.
What about the
audience?
Audience is going to be 87%.
85.
Oh.
That's pretty good. I need to
That's-
review the Twitch footage of this and see. There's too many mirrors and reflective surfaces.
Come on, give me
around
another one. Let's
here.
go. Let's go.
Play
I'm
this
hot.
game again?
Now
I'm hot. I'm hot. Come
Cooled
on.
off there.
Yeah, let's go. Well, no, that's 1, 2. That's 3 or 4.
You have 2 of 4. You did not get it right. You were
You
close on the last
87
one.
and
Acing
85%.
the first two is
87 and
is
85%
outrageous.
is pretty much.
I think basically just add
On the
30
dot.
some is the rule. Here.
Super Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, I have no clue about that one. I'm out. I don't
That's
know.
where you draw
what
the line?
Yeah,
You
I don't
knew-
know
you
what
knew-
the animated movies would be. No clue.
I bet it's. I'm gonna go with.
I think the critics are like 51%.
I'll go 62 and 88.
You want to go ahead and get your two guesses together, Jason? You said
51% and 73.
59 and 95.
Oh, 95.
The audience
Wow.
likes this. I have not. I've
But
not
I was
seen
closer
it,
with the
shockingly.
critics,
You were
though.
closer.
You know, right in the
No,
ballpark.
I think that it's fair for you to say, barring some reviewing of the film and seeing if any trash cans got kicked around back here, that you are good at guessing Rotten Tomatoes numbers, but that you opened up on a Patrick Mahomes like start to your career.
I was Brock Purdy, and there's only down from here.
Yeah.
Can he back up when Brock? No, I cannot. I can get close, but
Who was the guy for the Rockies? Was it Trevor Story that just hit home runs every day for a while?
amazing.
That's what you just did.
He was amazing.
Speaking
man.
of Trevor Story, could I go ahead and get your prediction for the ranking of this new Peacock show based on a true story? May or may not involve Trevor Story.
I want to see that. I like the actor and actress in it.
I'm gonna say the critics say it's like 22% or something.
No, they've got to go bad. They're going to go better. They're going to like it. They're going to say 71.
74.
Nice job, Nick.
Your movie's mixed TV. You guys have got
It's a good
Rotten
point.
Tomatoes
I'm
figured
big
out
screen,
here.
he's small screen.
That's exactly right.
He's a TV guy.
Yeah, that Mick knows TV, and you know the beauty of the silver screen.
Yeah, but I really don't. I just I barely know sports, and that's sometimes on the big screen. Sometimes it's on the small screen. I don't really know.
If you started watching sports in a movie theater, you might become a sports genius.
That's what they say. It's the only thing missing. You hung out with Noah Gray.
I did.
Kindred spirits.
I did. On Friday, yeah. The only real reason I had to, not the only reason, but the one that was really driving me
all
at the time.
stars there, you landed.
I landed.
Noah Gray.
I landed with number 83 in your program, but type 1 in your pancreas, and that to me was the most important thing.
They're diabetes brothers.
Okay.
Yes, we're both diabetic, so I can make that joke, and he can be on the.
But
receiving end of
I
it.
can't make it.
No, but Aaron can. So this
Aaron
is a
can,
whole me and Aaron and Noah Gray. We're actually starting a club now.
Can I make the joke if I know somebody who's type 1?
Oof, that's interesting. I think there's a different level of.
Don't worry, I've got a type 1 friend.
I think there's a different level of jokes you guys are welcomed into now. But there's a few little secrets you got to keep. You can't have any of our fruit snacks, which is actually, which is believe it or not, the crux of this story that I asked Noah Gray a little bit about.
Let's hear it.
This was from along the path of the Super Bowl parade this year. There was a girl holding a sign off to the side that was offering Noah Gray some fruit snacks because you're moving around a lot. You're getting a lot of steps in. You're diabetic. You got to keep that BG up. And Noah Gray talked about that and a little more about the diabetic community that he's found here in Kansas City. And then I tried to sneak in a football question that, he was quicker than an Omnipod injection with that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just got off the duck boat, and it just happened. I wandered over to some fans, and this one girl who showed up literally there to give me these fruit stacks was kind of sitting there, and her mom showed me the sign, and it was just a cool experience to get to meet some amazing people who care about the type 1 diabetes community so much, to go out in the really cold weather and support me. So it was really cool to see, and hope she's doing well right now.
I have to imagine you've seen a pretty good community of people around you here in Kansas City. I will try not to get hit, I'm sorry. But I just wondered if you could speak a little more on the type of other interactions you've had, being able to be that for people, and now have people get to look at you and say, oh, that's an NFL player. A couple of tight ends too, you and Mark Andrews. Like we got a pretty good group over here.
Yeah, no, it's really cool, and it's a blessing, and I always look at it as a positive thing that I was diagnosed, because I get to meet some incredible people and hear some incredible stories. So, I'm just grateful to be in KC, where, everywhere there's a type 1 diabetes community, but it's even more special that I'm playing here and, in the community. So it's really awesome to have stories like that, where people are waiting at the parade, or I'm at a signing somewhere and people are coming up showing me that they're, Omnipod, whatever they're using to manage their diabetes. So it's just a really cool experience to get to be around that here.
One football question for you. Another year here. You've been here like a sneaky long time now. I know Andy Reid's offense is notoriously hard to learn. Mahomes and Kelsey obviously have quite a relationship for the same position. Where are you at right now in this offense, and how excited are you for this year for you?
I got no idea, man. We'll see when we get the season up, but I'm just glad to be a part of it and enjoying my time in KC, brother.
No, I appreciate you. Thank you very much, man.
Is this year 3 or 4 for him?
Year 3.
Drafted in the.
I mean, how many years has he played?
The class with
you're just going to ignore
3. Just say 3.
Well, no, because I wanted to put it in. I wanted to put it in the context. It's
no, don't worry.
I thought he'd been here 3 years, and you were like, "Well, he's been here a sneaky long time." Am I forgetting some years?
Well, no, it will be.
He's
entering,
played 2 years.
He's played. Yes, that's correct. He's played 2. It'll be entering year 3.
So he's going into year 3.
But thinking about him,
what is my mic on here?
Thinking about him,
is my mic off?
With Creed Humphrey and Nick Bolton as the back half of that draft class.
Who I think of him
is just crazy, because we've seen so much. We've seen those guys were like immediate starters, and for Noah Gray it was like kind of a redshirt year, a little more of a larger role going down the line. I'm buying Noah Gray stock.
Is he going to year 3 or what?
I mean, the only guys that haven't played longer than him are like rookies. So I wouldn't call it a sneaky long time.
You know who else was in that draft class?
I would say that Sky Moore was like
not
brand
Sky
new
Moore.
still, so not sneaky old.
He was not in that
we
draft
would talk
class.
mostly to the younger guys. I think that might have been by design.
But you know who else was in that draft class? Trey Smith.
Trey Smith was also there, by the way.
And he was out at the softball game, and he was asked by Sterling or Josh.
This
or
was mine.
else,
This was my question.
On
Thank you.
having 2 new tackles and being kind of the veteran, sneaky long time. He's been
See,
the veteran
guys, hello
of the offensive line.
Donovan Jawan, Wanye Morris, Jerome Carvin, a couple other rookies as well. They've been great additions, man, and it's really cool to have them. just playing with Juwan and Donovan, just, working with them has been great, man. And I think it's going to bring another element to our team, And once again, it's just been great working with them, man. Really excited about the future.
It's also got to be a little weird for you to be like one of the vets of the O-line now, like kind of getting them up to speed, but I imagine you're probably pretty comfortable with that?
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. Being an offensive lineman, the main thing is just as much consistency and chemistry you can build with the guy you're playing with. So, obviously, I got that with Creed, but, playing with a guy now, it's just about building that relationship up. And it's been fun, man. It's really easy going in there. We have a talented individual playing next year.
And he's obviously going into year 7.
People forget Creed and Trey Smith have been playing next to each other in the middle of this offensive line for a sneaky long time.
What do they go into year 3? I think
more.
Look that up.
More time together than Donovan Smith or Juwan Taylor here in the Chiefs' offense.
They played so many postseason games that it's almost like an extra half year. Basically,
really kind of is. I think that's a great point, Nick. Thank you.
Good point.
Just trying to save you.
6 postseason games together. 6 of them. 6.
We really get like 3 football seasons per football season in Kansas City.
I just want to hear your next interview with like Rashee Rice. You're like, you've been here a sneaky long time here since May.
It's been multiple months.
Feel that long? Because that is, in the lifespan of some insects, is that time? That's a lifetime you've been here. If you were this sort of insect,
how many generations of flies have come and gone?
So many.
In the time you've been here with the Chiefs, it's been a really sneaky long time. What are you going to do? Month number 4?
Willie Gay was a blast out there. Also, didn't clip anything from him, but
he's going to year 4.
He's been here for a sneaky long time. I think he's entering year 3. Oh, year 4 actually.
No, he's going into year 4, but I have to look it up on the online. Maybe I'll have Drake look it up or something online. Rashee Rice actually going into month 3.
Yeah, he is.
You're already in month 3 of your time with the Chiefs. Also, still
not
not
a trimester.
You're not even under contract yet, but that's kind of cool, though. Everybody else is
he isn't yet.
Still under contract.
Only one not signed. He refuses to sign. He said he's going to hold out. He might miss this season. He said he didn't say that.
I asked Felix and Udike Uzama what it's been like to mentor B.J. Thompson, 2 defensive ends that have been here for obviously very different lengths of time. FAU here days longer than B.J. Thompson's been. Here's my clip of Felix. Oh, that didn't happen. Okay,
48 hours longer. You've had a couple more days.
You've been here for a sneaky longer time than B.J. Thompson.
Studying the playbook and things like that, and the Spags defense.
My blood sugar was high, guys. All right, this is ableist.
Well, you were going to take another hit.
This is discriminatory.
Which also I think that would have been illegal where you were located.
No, I was going to have a fruit snack.
You said another hit.
Oh.
You said before I take another hit, which again.
Did I say another hit?
You said another. Drake, can we find that?
When did that happen? Was that
Josh
in the
Briscoe
audio?
saying I'm going to take another hit?
Oh, sorry. I was trying to let us not get hit. My timing was good. I was talking to Noah Gray right as Patrick Mahomes went up to do a little BP at the time. So we were right in the splash zone.
Were you in the outfield?
As BP was going
were you
on.
Interviewing him in left field?
Sorry, Jason. So these are football players who had been warming up the entire time before that. So we almost got hit at the table we were broadcasting from down by third base, and almost had just a pop-up land straight on us.
And so they probably didn't have the rolling cage out there for the BP to cover things up.
They did have the sort of backstop cage, but it was not super useful with the little cutout because they were throwing underhand.
Yeah.
So they were off to the far side of it, just trying.
So what I'm hearing
is
Mahomes got up there for BP, and you were nervous that he was going to spray one down the first base line?
I'm now wondering. I was out there for a sneaky long time, so the story, the timeline of everything has sort of gotten a little fuzzy.
Going into hour 3.
Maybe Mahomes wasn't up until right after that. I think he was up then, though.
He had a lot of no-look line drives.
That's true.
That's right.
That's true.
Yeah.
There were some confident bat swingers and some very unconfident ones.
Okay.
At some point, I feared for my life, and Noah Gray was looking over to see where the sound had come from. I wanted to reassure him that I would keep him safe.
Oh, okay. Good. And you weren't going to take another hit?
Not at the field, though.
I think at one point we heard somebody have some sort of epic fail with the swing because it was the sound.
Oh, the club horn mid-diabetes conversation. Yeah. I would like to have that permanently from this point forward. Had some goldfish earlier. Let's go ahead and see. I'm at 119 right now. Hey, it's also 119. That's 122 now, but this clock over here was at 119.
Well, yeah, means it's wrong.
It's been wrong for
request
actually off by a
members
sneaky
of the
large
diabetes
time.
community to maybe talk more in English because I don't know what an Omnipod is. I don't know what 119 means. I don't know any of that stuff.
It's the new ear pod.
This is my Omnipod right here. You see this fun little fella. This is my plastic pancreas that lives on the outside of me. And 119 is how
I've seen
cool
those
I am
before.
on a scale of 1 to 100. Actually, yeah, I broke the
Is
scale.
that the critics or the audience?
That's my rotten. I actually have sweet tomatoes, which is really unfortunate because I don't want them at all.
119 is his OBS plus, his
his
over blood sugar plus.
Yeah, I think I can definitely get you some advanced diabetes stats that I think are really they'll really bring you along, Mick. I think you're gonna love my
100 is an average pancreas.
Diabetes
for dummies.
He's
more or less.
He's at 119, which is 19% better than somebody's average.
What's your pancreas war?
Low. my pancreas is insulin above expected
Your
is like
par,
minus
pancreas above replacement.
It's minus like 40. Yeah, it's really bad. But 100 is basically where you're supposed to be.
Okay.
So
Well,
that
see?
now you know.
There you go. So you were Ryan O'Hearn last year, and now you're Ryan O'Hearn with the Orioles.
I was. It's one place I don't want to be batting 300. It's too high. You don't want your blood sugar to be that high.
The Mendoza line
You don't even
is
want
actually
Mendoza
good.
line.
Yes. No, the Mendoza line is
way too high.
a little much.
Yeah.
You can
You
bring it
actually-
down
yeah.
from there, but
Being on this side of the Mendoza line is good for you, bad for baseball.
Nate Eaton, who's got the lowest average? What do you want to be?
Do you want to be on the Eaton line?
no, usually eating is what gets me in trouble.
Eaton get you past Mendoza, which he's trying to do as well.
Yeah, both of us are working on the Mendoza line.
We'll see what the Royals' moves may be. They've made some minor league moves, and they've brought up they have moved up 3 players from Northwest Arkansas to Omaha, and one of those being a center fielder. Dyron Blanco was taken out of the lineup, I think, yesterday, and so the expectation is maybe he would be called up to the big leagues, and Jackie Bradley Jr. would be DFA'd, and they would have a new center fielder who already has 40 stolen bases this year for AAA. So somebody who can play defense and then actually gives you, the ability to pinch run and steal some bases. I think also a chance that he could platoon to some degree with Drew Waters, or they just simply say, hey, Olivares, you're a DH, go play DH. Blanco, go play left field, or Blanco play center field, and Drew Waters play left field, because I don't think Drew Waters is the center fielder of the future. So is he a corner outfielder? Well, then play left field. Drew and Dyron Blanco, who's probably a 4th or 5th outfielder on a team that, could actually get above 500. You go play center field on a team that's pacing for 45 wins over the course of the season.
It's safe to say it's the most interest for a team coming back home after an 0-6 road stand.
That's right.
Sporting an 18-47 record.
Yep.
In the history of baseball, because you have those moves. You have Ellie De La Cruz of the Cross is in town. And then it's Chiefs night. Yep. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, the Lombardi Trophy is all going to be out there.
Yep.
So,
and then it's the Angels.
Who? The Reds.
After that.
Okay.
After that. The homestand continues with like a couple other players in baseball you've heard of.
Tonight. Yeah, it's true. You
got Shohei.
And
he's not going to pitch though. I was checking that earlier. I think it's the game before the Royals series that he pitches.
Boo.
Yeah. So.
Boo.
I bet he hits.
I bet he does.
A lot.
I bet he puts one into the water. I bet there's a couple of tank shots from Ellie, or I think there are going to be some balls that get wet over the next few nights with either Ellie De La Cruz or Shohei Ohtani.
I don't know. It's Pitcher's Park, Jason.
The park that's holding Ellie De La Cruz and Shohei Ohtani is Yellowstone. That's the one they're not hitting it out of. Yellowstone, real Pitcher's Park, has yet to be a home run here. It's a really tough one to get it out. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back, learn funniest best from the weekend. That comes up next.
Want to see more of The Zone? Watch the show.
All right, that'll do it here on a Monday edition of The Zone. Thank you, Mick.
Sorry.
Appreciate it, man. KSHB 41 Sports
Barry.
Director. Barrel.
Who does Mick remind you of physically?
Oh, don't say it.
Do you have one in your head that you get more often than not?
Yes.
Who is it?
I don't think you look
a
like.
handful. I don't like any of them. They're all ugly.
You don't look like Steve Carell.
No.
No. Okay.
Adam Sandler.
We've talked
Seth
about Sandler
Meyers.
before.
And then what's his name from The Hangover and The Office?
Yeah.
Nard Dog.
Nard Dog. Yeah, you got a little Nard Dog in you.
I don't know.
Yeah,
you got that Nard Dog in you.
I was thinking maybe more Chris Pine.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna be my next one.
I've heard Ryan Gosling a lot.
I'll take
or
it.
like a
I'll
Brad
deal with
Pitt.
that.
No, for me.
Oh,
or like a
I
Brad
see.
Pitt or something
Great
like that.
features, bad ears. It seems like.
Hello, it's Mark Whitlow from Office Products Alliance. Kansas City is on a roll. So many good things are coming our way. Many outsiders are realizing what a great